Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. And this week on the show, we're going to be reviewing the 7th episode of Andor announcement. We have an awesome panel here. My name is Chris, and joining me is my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, Hannah. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I didn't realize that the episode of Andor was called Announcement. I just thought we were making another announcement here. You know, the way we made a big deal about all those announcements for 4 or 5 weeks
this
there.
This was the real
over
announcement.
The summer. Yeah, this is the real announcement. Yeah. Very much looking forward to talking about this episode. Very kind of mid-season check-in with everything that's been going on, seeing the results and the outcomes of a lot of the action that we don't usually have time for in Star Wars, which is nice. So I'm really looking forward to watching that. But I have a quick question off the top. Does anybody know, in the previously on for all of these episodes of Andor, have they used that clip of Luthen saying, "Wouldn't you rather give it all for something real?" Every week? Is that been every week?
It was this week, that's for sure. I usually skip past that because I just want as much time to watch the episode as many times as possible. But I left it playing on the background of the TV the last time I watched it, and I'm like, oh, that again. All right.
Yeah. I just want to say, I agree with Hannah. You're not allowed to skip the previously on. You can't skip the previously on. You can't skip
the
best part.
Yeah, it's my job to remember these things.
But it's part of the experience. I love the previously ons for these things. I love the intros, and I dearly miss with Star Wars. And I'm so glad that Game of Thrones still gives us the next time trailers. I want the credits to end and there to be a thing that says next time on Andor. That gives us a little teaser about something else to come on. But anyways, very much looking forward to getting into this episode. It's going to be a great show.
Yes, and also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, so usually speaking, I'm up at 2 a.m. my time when the episode drops. And usually speaking, I will go look on Disney Plus and I will post on our Twitter and our Facebook, say, hey, the new episode's up. It's titled such and such. I see announcement, episode 7 announcement. I'm like, oh, so Bob from social media clearly made a faux pas. Clearly, it's some kind of weird Disney Plus thing. They put announcement instead of the actual episode of the thing. And then I get, partway through the episode and Dedra says, it's an announcement. I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't a mistake. That actually is the title episode. Okay, point taken. So, yeah, good episode.
Ben, when you said episode 7 announcement, I was immediately transported back 10 years to October 30th, 2012, and hearing the words episode 7 announcement. And I still, this is how much that the announcement of the sequel trilogy is ingrained in my spirit. I felt like a tingle up my spine of excitement at just the words episode 7 announcement. I'm like, ooh.
Back to a time when episode 7 meant so much. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing we knew. Literally. It's just episode 7. That's it.
Also, how messed up is it that it's been 10 years? 10 years.
Week after next. Insane.
Upsetting.
Freaky.
Man, I forgot about that. Thank you.
let's all just take a moment and stew in that together. Let's all just consider the onward march of time.
It's been 10 years and action figures have gone from $8 to $35. So, yay.
Oh God. Oh, that's even worse. I don't want to think about that. Yeah.
A lot has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, let's all just stew in that for a minute here. Just I'll sit and think about that.
Let's just keep stewing.
Deep thinking.
A marinating
Okay.
episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So putting the transport back on the rail. They don't know how to put it back on. They just know how to get it off. Also joining us from the Raeside, it's Hannah.
G'day there. It is good to be back. Another interesting episode of. I've got lots of questions. I've got lots of thoughts. And not all extremely positive. So it's going to be an interesting show again. I'm sure by the end of this show, I'll probably have different thoughts of when I began the discussion, but it is going to be a good day. Can't wait to get into it.
Awesome. And then joining us for the first time on the Star Wars Underworld podcast, you may know her from the Culture Slate Reacts YouTube channel. It's Catherine. Hey, Catherine, welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going, guys? It's great to be here. Good to be here with you all. I thought it was a fantastic episode. I know that there wasn't a whole lot of action this time, but I am the kind of person who I love getting to know characters. I love stories, and we really got a great look at characters and the things that they were revealing about themselves and about each other. And I actually really enjoyed seeing that. It was a nice break from especially the tension of the last episode. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. And now, Catherine, before we get too far into the episode, let's get your thoughts just sort of overall on Andor. You know, we're halfway through the season now. What have you thought of the first What have you thought of the first half of the season?
Yeah, I have enjoyed it. It's obviously very different from anything we've really seen out of Star Wars up until this point, even out of Rogue One. The pacing feels different. It's very gritty and realistic, as opposed to a lot of the things that we've seen from Star Wars. I keep thinking about this as compared to other things we've seen around this time period in, Legends and canon and things we've seen out of Rebels, things we've seen out of A New Hope, and just how different the feel is. And it's very interesting to get that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is definitely the most tense Star Wars series I think we've had to date. Although I will say, we've talked a little bit in the past about the comparisons between this show and the other Star Wars shows, and it's kind of how we've talked a little bit. It's maybe a bit of a false comparison at times, even that because you don't have to just like one thing. You can like many things. But I will say, I think this episode has a moment in it that's very Mandalorian, and I will explain what I mean when we get to it later on in the episode. But we'll get on to all of that and more in a little bit. But Chris, why don't you run through some plugs for us?
All right. So if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you punch that subscribe button, Chewy. And if you're not, we are on YouTube. That's where you can see our faces in addition to hearing our voices. But if you're watching us on YouTube and you just want to listen to us, you can do that on any podcast app as well, and we'd appreciate any reviews over there. Right now, the best way to support us over at the Star Wars Underworld is to super chat in the live shows, or if you can't catch the live shows, become a channel member. And we want to thank everybody who is a channel member and who super chats for helping keep things running over here at the Star Wars Underworld. And we have a fantastic new community that we're building over on Discord. The Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network has a server, and Ben is the person with the keys to that. So go ask Ben.
I have to physically let you in, open the door and let you in.
It's like one of those things with the two guys with the keys that have to turn it at the same time. It's that, but it's both Bens. So it's we've cloned Ben.
No,
so
he's just
uses
two hands,
turning them at the same time.
That's right. So over at that server, you can interact with us, and you can interact with the host of all the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network. That includes the Raeside, Ion Cannon, and Tales from Beyond the Galaxy as well, and hopefully many more to join as well. We have some exciting things in the works for the future of the network, so you can check that out. Also, there's some Culture Slate merch all over the place tonight. I've got my Culture Slate Halloween shirt right now.
Nice.
And
Bleeding as well.
Catherine's got the We're Doomed shirt from Culture Slate as well. Which is pretty awesome. That's
Nice.
actually my favorite.
I especially like the We're Doomed shirt that Catherine's wearing because I came up with the idea. Just saying.
Ben Hart, fashion designer. We've got got another
that t-shirt guy.
So if you're interested in any of that merch, you can go over to cultureslate.com/store, and that's where you can find these and many other fantastic designs. And we're also going to be dropping some holiday designs as well for the holidays coming up pretty soon. So you definitely want to keep checking back to cultureslate.com/store. All right, let's get into it.
All right. So we are, of course, talking about Andor Season 1, Episode 7, announcement written by Stephen Schiff and directed by Benjamin Caron or Caron. I'm not really sure on the pronunciation, but I'm never sure on pronunciation, so it's kind of par for the course.
Where's the pronunciation guide?
That would be something. Yeah, they've brought back the episode guides on StarWars.com, which is very nice. I really appreciate those. But yes, a pronunciation guide would also be highly, highly helpful. I'm still not sure if it's Deidre or Dedra or Deirdre or Deirdre. I'm not sure on what Denisco's character's name really is.
It's
Deidre.
Also,
Okay.
hearing Lieutenant. I also keep hearing Lieutenant. There's no F in that word. What are you doing?
Okay, but that is the correct pronunciation of that word. You Americans
all the British people.
You Americans have perverted it to be lieutenant. It's lieutenant. That is how.
Let me take schedule. Let me
as a not very proud member of the British. What is even the word? I don't know. Commonwealth. Thank you. It is lieutenant.
Mississippi guy here correcting you on your international affairs.
Oh my goodness! Pretty soon we're gonna be starting talking about colonial Yularen and stuff.
Cologne. Say it like that from now on.
Yularen should have his own scent. Smell like fascism. It's Yularen.
Need something to pop up on the screen anytime a face comes on screen that is their name, because I cannot remember anybody's name ever.
That's why I use the subtitles.
You got flashcards.
That's why I use the subtitles.
It's like a running thing with me on the Culture Slate Reacts channels.
That was the confirmation that you know who was in the episode was the subtitles. No one said his name.
Yeah. You just kind of had to
I
go
didn't
by
have the subtitles on. I was like, is that who I think it is? And then I waited like 30 minutes and the credits came up. I'm like, yes!
And Tony Gilroy said this show wouldn't have fan service.
You service.
Yeah, I was like,
well,
that's pretty good.
He has to try to hide it. Now he has to live up to his big words. So now every time there is, he has to make it really like downplay it as much as possible. Like, no, you didn't see this. You didn't see this. No, that's not him.
No one mention him.
Somebody else.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're already very excited about you, Lauren. So I have a feeling that's where the conversation will begin. But before we get to that, let's go around the table, give our initial impressions, kick things off the way we always do. And Ben Hart, the fashion designer, t-shirt guy, we're going to throw it to you first. What'd you think of announcement?
Yeah, so this episode gave me something, or gave us all something, that you don't often see, at least in an extended form in any media, whether TV, movies, whatever. It gave us an epilogue to the climax. It gave us, we had that amazing episode last week, which was a buildup of specifically 3 episodes, but really 6 episodes of getting to a certain point and just the releasing of all the tension and giving us this great action sequence and doing all this crazy stuff. But often you watch a TV show or, especially a movie, you will get the climax within, 10 minutes of the end of the movie, where you might get 5 minutes. In a TV episode, occasionally I have seen them devote maybe a half an episode to like after the climax after the big action sequence at the end. This episode gave us a whole dang episode, and it was great because not only did it catch up with all the characters, it directly addressed how everyone was reacting across the board in regards to what's the Empire thinking, what they're thinking, what's Luthen thinking, what's Mon Mothma thinking, which is just fascinating. And, as the episode, announces, this is an announcement. This is kind of seemingly the beginnings of the rebellion. This is a declaration of war from Luthen, pretty much, but also what will become the rebellion. And it's just fascinating. The whole thing was great. Obviously, another slow burn, not a lot of action, not a lot of stuff going on, but also a ton of stuff going on because we have all these moving pieces coming together, and we can see, and I already have a theory about how some of these characters are going to come together, but definitely these characters are on a collision course, and we're about to see that all come out about either, I'm assuming, later this season, maybe even next season, who knows. But just all around an amazing episode that I think further adds to the intensity. It starts to build up the intensity again. The show isn't about like building up to the end of the season. It's building up tension and then releasing it in, the third episode. And then we're starting that upward climb again of the stakes have been raised, and now we're heading towards something else we don't know yet that is gonna be bad.
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime you end
or
an
good,
episode,
depending on how you look at it.
I think anytime you end an episode with your main character going to prison for 6 years, things are going to get bad. I think that's generally how these things work. Hannah, what about you? Your thoughts overall on episode 7?
Yeah, absolutely. I really actually enjoyed this episode because, the depth of dialogue we're getting in this show. One thing that it took me a second to get used to, but now that I'm like used to it, I love it, is that there's something about, I feel like they've turned the volume down on all the dialogue scenes just a little bit. So you physically have to like lean in and be like, wait, what is it? What's happening? What are they saying? What's going on? Like you want to be involved in it. But it's it was an interesting episode, like Ben just said, not as action packed, but there was a lot of elements in here that was really, I think, pivotal and gonna kind of pay off in kind of happen maybe upcoming episodes. My main, I guess, criticism, which is not really criticism, is that all the scenes that we got, I wish we were there for like 5 minutes longer everywhere we were. I wish we were at Mon Mothma's party just that couple minutes longer, just to see a couple more interactions and a bit more
long enough to see Sly more.
Where's Sly?
More?
Where's
Oh
Mastamita?
my
Where's
God, that's the thing, right?
Hashtags more Sly more,
Right?
please.
More Sly
Give
more.
me some more.
Come on. So I think that's like really my only critique is like, I'm loving all these moments, but I just wish we had a little bit more to kind of really get comfortable and settle in and understand what's happening. And like even the scenes with Luthen, like I love that this whole facade he's got of this, he's this antiques dealer kind of thing. Like I wish we were just there a little bit longer to really understand where he's at, what he's thinking. But maybe that's the point. We're not meant to fully understand everything that's happened, and that's kind of maybe going to come near the end of the season where all the understanding comes. But yeah, pretty good episode in my books.
Yeah, a lot of the pieces of the puzzle were thrown on the table in this episode, but we still don't quite know how they all fit together. So we're got those next 5 weeks to try and sort that out and maybe find a few more pieces. Catherine, over to you. Your thoughts, your initial impression of this episode?
Yeah, I also really enjoyed a lot of the dialogue. I feel like it gave us a lot of things that weren't, apparent and out there and in our faces. We saw a lot of the characters. I think it was really neat to see a lot of characters, and the setting being their home, which is really, really interesting to me, because they were kind of going outside of this safety zone. A lot of them were, for example, Mon Mothma telling her childhood friend that she actually is a part of the rebellion. And it's like, this is her home, yet all of these people who she feels unsafe around are in this place, and the only person that she truly does feel safe around, and kind of does have those moments where she's like, oh, can I tell you this? And then she eventually realizes that she can. And a very similar thing happened with Marva and Cassian, where you could tell when she told him, or when she told him that about what happened with the, the robbery, or the announcement as they're calling it, you could tell he really wanted for a second to tell her that he was a part of it, and he didn't, because I think he knew inside also that he wanted to keep her safe, and he seemed very conflicted when she came out and told him how, gung-ho about the rebellion that she was, and he was, trying to pull her away from that, and even though she told him she loved him so much, she just couldn't bring herself to do that. So there were lots of just really good things that related to each other, but not in ways that I think you would expect. Lots of mirroring and things like that. I thought it was really fantastic. It just takes a long time sometimes to process all of the details that they give us, because, as I said, they're not apparent at first, and sometimes the episode can seem a little bit slow, but you go back and watch and you really listen to what they're telling us, and you listen to or you watch each scene and think about how each scene is relating to the other one, because these are kind of happening simultaneously, but in completely different places with completely different people that may or may not know each other at this point. So I just really like how they did all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely get into some more of that as we continue the conversation, especially how the relationships are changing, and sometimes in ways that were expected, and other times not so expected. Very, very loaded episode. Chris, your thoughts on announcement?
Wow, I feel like this was the most action-packed episode with literally no action in it. Like, I don't know how they were able to do that, but there was so much suspense to it and so much intrigue to it, and there were so many kind of almost like violent type conversations that were happening that were just so subtle. You have so many characters confronting each other and arguing with each other and trying to have a conversation about something they're not really openly talking about. Like there was just so much subtlety to the dialogue and the acting of this episode. I feel like if this show does not get some of those actors nominated for Emmys, I don't know what the Emmys are doing. Like this is some serious acting. Like Marva, Dominic, who plays Marva?
Fiona Shaw.
Thank you, Ben. Ben Hart, the
It's
Star
amazing
Wars guy, trivia champion.
Yeah, trivia defending trivia champion.
Fiona Shaw. Oh my gosh, that her telling Cassian that they have to part ways is one of the most incredible acting scenes I've ever seen in Star Wars. The amount of different layers to that she put on that was absolutely brilliant. And my favorite moment is when she asks him like if he understands why, and he says no, and she says, well, you will. The way that she said it, the way that she kind of like took her voice, the tone of, she projected her voice a little bit less, internalized it a little bit more, and looked down instead of at him, like she was trying to convince herself that would be the case rather than convince him, because she's trying to deal with the struggle of letting him go. Like that was incredible. Like I think most people, when they're writing that scene, or acting it, I don't know whose call it was to say it, the director, the writer, or the actor, but most people would just directly have her look at him and say it with the same tone of voice, like trying to convince him, like, you'll understand one day. But the fact that she just kind of pulls back and is like, you'll understand, like that was incredible. That was so subtle. There was so much subtext to that. So just there's so many moments in that with so many characters, so many moments in this episode with so many characters that are kind of in that ballpark of amazing acting. And then just beyond that, the character study of Cassian in this episode was amazing. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the character arc of Finn in The Force Awakens, because you get a little bit more clear picture of his motivations and his background. 7 episode in, you've been getting these bits and pieces, and now you have some lines of dialogue and some flashbacks to really fill in the blanks about what happened in his life, what got him to where he's at, why he has the feelings that he does towards the Empire and towards just life. And it's like learning that, you know, that name that he took to be his spy name, his fake name, was his adoptive father's name. And that not only that, but that's where his last name comes from too. This episode revealed that Clem Andor is the guy's name. So I thought that was pretty incredible. And then, you know, just finding out, you know, what happened to him, and, you know, why Cassian has that rage in him, and then why he's just trying to run away and get away from it all and protect people from it. Like, you can definitely see why. Very similar to Finn and The Force Awakens. And this episode just has a beautiful, beautiful, like, I mean, it was just straight up, it was irony in this episode. Like, it was irony that, you know, I at such a high level, because you get to see the consequences of Cassian's actions, like, come full circle and catch up with him. You get to see the whole process of how that happens. You know, he makes the decision for money to go and commit this robbery and help the rebellion so that he can have enough to bug out and run away with his 100,000 credits. But then he runs away and doesn't continue fighting and leaves the galaxy to fend for itself. And it catches up to him because as a result of his actions, the Empire decides, well, if you have a crime that is, you know, indirectly even related to rebelling against the Empire, like being a little, you know, uncooperative with a pushy shore trooper cop, then, like, you know, you're gonna get a much harsher sentence for that. And then that's what happened. So you got, you know, you had the setup of him running away, then you have the internal mechanisms of the ISB and the Empire and Palpatine and Yularen and how that's happening, and then you see how the sentences are being increased, and then you have, you know, Deidre calling the shot, like calling it and saying, like, this is the wrong move, this is going to be their undoing. They're just fanning the flames of rebellion by doing this. And that's more foreshadowing. We know it's foreshadowing because we know what's going to happen. We know that Andor, as a result of this, is going to end up joining the rebellion. We just don't know exactly how yet. That's what the show is answering, is the how, not the if. And that's just absolutely incredible writing. So
I feel like an alternate title for this episode could have been Consequences.
Yes. Announcement and consequences.
Announcement and consequences, yeah.
So I will suffice it to say that, you know, somehow I think this might be my favorite episode of the series, despite all the action was in conversation, and that is so hard to pull off, so hard. And the fact that they executed it so well, and they provided so much world building and backstory in this episode, I feel like this is just, the show just continues to get better. And like, this is kind of continuing to underscore for me, like, this is my favorite Star Wars series to this point. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah, what they do so well in this show in general, but I feel like this episode in particular hammers the point home, is you can understand every single character's motivations completely. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to like them. In fact, sometimes you probably shouldn't agree with and shouldn't like them. But you can understand where they're coming from. And that's been the case since episode 1 with this show, with Cyril. And it's just every step of the way, you see it coming more and more full circle, to the point where you have conversations between, you know, two ostensibly good guys, quote unquote, with not quote unquote, definitely good guys, but with Luthen and Mon Mothma, and they're back and forth. You can they're on opposite. They seem like for a moment they might be on opposite sides of this issue, and you completely understand where both of them are coming from. Completely understand where both of them are coming from, and it's something this show has just done an amazing job of. And yeah, I'll echo a lot of what's been said about this. I think this episode is really, really good. It's really, really strong. I still think I like last week better, but that's just because I'm a sucker for a good heist sequence. But there was a real Yeah, consequences is kind of the name of the game in this episode. One thing that I was really interested to see with episode 7 of this series is this episode was written by Stephen Schiff, who was originally announced as the showrunner for this show and was basically replaced by Tony Gilroy. And, you know, it seemed like his version of Andor was actually kind of in a lot of trouble at one point and might have been canceled if it were not for, you know, Gilroy swooping in as he did on Rogue One and kind of writing the ship. So I thought it was really interesting that he still, at the very least, gets credit for writing this episode. And, you know, I'm wondering if there's any sort of glimpse into what his version of the show might have been in this episode. And I was sort of wondering if that would be the case. And I really think there isn't. Either they're just crediting him because of some union rules or something, or he just came on board and was like, yeah, whatever, I'll write a perfect episode of your show, Tony. That's fine. I know how this game works.
I feel like Star Wars very often suffers from tonal issues when there's different writers and different directors. And that's the case with films, and that's also the case with the series, animated and live action. So many times the tone is just all over the place because you feel like the people who are writing and directing aren't writing and directing the same characters. In their head, it seems like they're different characters sometimes, or just the tone of the show is a little bit different. And sometimes that can be fun if the show's very eclectic, like the Clone Wars has some tonal shifts that I think are welcome and exciting. But I think other times it can be a huge detractor. And one of the things that I love about the show is it's so consistent. You can't really tell that there's any type of changing of the guard with writers and directors. Like, it feels like it's one person who did all of it. And I feel like that cohesion and that synergy between all the people working on it is absolutely incredible. That is so difficult for everybody to kind of understand where everybody's at and kind of come to this collective understanding of who the characters are and where they're going and what the tone of the show is. Like, I think that's absolutely incredible. It just seems like one long movie that just keeps going on and on and on and on.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to Tony Gilroy at the top there, that he found people that could work with him on this show and that would see things in a similar way to him, that would also, you know, bring their own, you know, unique sensibilities to these episodes, bring their own touch, bring their own sort of flair and flavor to them. But at the same time, they were all coming from the same place. They all were looking at these same characters. And I think it helps that it's a lot of new characters. Like, you know, outside of Mon Mothma, who's still a pretty blank canvas, and Cassian, who we've seen for one movie, you know, Admiral Yularen, or Colonel Yularen at this point, I guess, is the first, like, familiar, quote unquote, face that we've seen on this show. And here we are 7 episodes in. I mean, how long did it take for, you know, Mandalorian to start having its characters show up again? How many Obi-Wan Kenobi opens with, you know, a recap of the prequel trilogy, and there's Obi-Wan, and there's Leia, and there's the Grand Inquisitor, and there's all these characters that we're very familiar with. So again, none of that is necessarily bad, but it's just this show has I think is allowed to be a little bit more focused because they are still defining who these characters are. There aren't 30 to 40 years worth of backstory in people's minds that you have to reconcile. It's still, we're finding out who Cassian is through these episodes.
That's true.
But let's talk about old Admiral Yularen. Once the right-hand man of Anakin Skywalker, now head of the ISB, will one day presumably die on the Death Star. He pops up in this episode to announce that the Senate is going to pass the Patriot Act. I mean the PORD. And given the ISB some new surveillance powers, new surveillance and imprisonment power. Hannah, I'll throw this to you. What did you make of seeing Yularen again in this show, and the way they introduced him and what he did in this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the incorporation of Yularen was so clever because Star Wars fans, especially coming off like Mandalorian season 2, where we got, you know, a massive cameo like every episode. The conversation of cameo and fan service has been pretty spicy for the past like little while, and you're always saying he's not going to do fan service, and everyone's like, oh, is that good or bad? And having big reactions to that. Like, I feel like it's been quite a turbulent kind of topic of conversation, but Yularen in this show and in this scene and coming in this way is just, to me, I feel like you can't even argue it to be fan service, because it makes so much sense and it's so fitting, and his character really fits in this setting. And yeah, I think that's what I'm just really happy to see. I didn't know until like after the episode, and I was on Twitter just seeing people's reactions, and then I just kept saying Yularen. I'm like, I was like, oh my god, what the hell? And then going back and rewatching it. So watching it the first time, not thinking it's anyone I know, was interesting, and then coming back for the second time to be like, okay, this is Yularen talking about all this, and directing this thing and putting all these things in place was really, really interesting. But I loved Yularen. To me, it wasn't fan service because he fits so well. Makes so much sense to see this character in where he is. And I do have to say, these ISB scenes are my favorite scenes of the show. It's like my absolute, I could spend a whole hour, like what I was saying at the start, like I could spend a whole hour, I feel, in these meetings, just like watching it transpire. And to me, the writing of these meetings, like just the dynamic of all the characters and like the conversations is just spot on. And like the way they kind of set up, also Blevin is one of the best Star Wars names I've heard. Blevin? What? But the way they like set up, he's like trying to get Deidre like out or something, he's gone, she's done something wrong, and then just like with the flow of conversation, it's like, actually no, Blevin, you're wrong, mate. And like,
to see him deflate, to see him just have this smug grin on his face, like, I've got her now. And then the guy, he's like, oh, what if she did? And then he's like, oh, what? No.
Right? It's
incredible acting.
So satisfying.
Incredible.
So satisfying.
Never thought you'd be cheering for an Imperial officer, and yet there we all are going,
that's what this show continues to have, this style where it's just a bunch of protagonists and a bunch of anti-heroes. And then again, the antagonist once again is the system. And if there is anyone, it's maybe Palpatine, and that's about it. Even on both sides, the Empire and the rebellion, it's just all characters that are presented in their day-to-day lives trying to do the right thing based on what they think the right thing is. And you even have Cyril like saying that verbatim, like, I tried to do the right thing, and I got in trouble for it. Like, it wasn't my fault. So I think it's incredible that this show can humanize the characters on all sides of the conflicts so well, and actually have you rooting, like you're rooting. It's weird, like you're rooting for Deidre, and then you're like, wait, no, she's literally
right. Why are we happy about it? I love Deidre. I'm like,
if she succeeds,
yes,
Cassian goes down. Like that's that's the thing. Yeah,
she's trying to stop the rebellion. She's trying to shore up the power of the most evil character in the galaxy, Palpatine. That's what she's trying to do. And yet the writing of the show has her humanized to the point that you are in like protagonist zone in your head and thinking, oh, let's like, she's being presented with all these antagonist foils. Like Blevin is an antagonist foil to her character. And it's amazing that they're doing that because it's so subtle and rare.
Yeah. We see
extremely well because we haven't really seen her in contact with a lot of the rebels. And so I think by kind of isolating her and making her story one of her inside ISB for now, and not making her like indirectly, they're making her an antagonist against Cassian, but it's almost like they're setting up, okay, she has this story, we're not seeing her anywhere else, going up against Blevin, and obviously they've got, some issues with each other. They're probably both trying to climb this ladder. And so I think, and it's really funny because, she does a very similar thing that Cyril was trying to do. and she actually is having success with it in a way that he never did. And so I think by doing that, compartmentalizing it, it does allow us to humanize her a bit more, because we don't see her in direct conflict with who we're really rooting for throughout this. So
yeah, they've kept her kind of in her own little world, and I don't think we've seen her outside of the ISB building there, at least not a whole lot. Whereas Blevin, he's been out there. We've seen him going face to face with Cyril at the very least. He's been on Ferrex actively, putting down the citizen rape. But you said something really interesting there, Catherine, which is you used the phrase they're both just trying to climb the ladder, and it made me think of Skeen from last week. Yeah, he said to Cassian, like, we're both guys that know the only way out of the pit is to climb over someone else. And again, it's this whole idea that, that's the mindset that he's been a character we've been rooting for up until that very moment for 3 episodes. But here he is using, the terminology that describes what goes on within the Empire. He seems like a guy who probably would be pretty well suited to life under the ISB if that's his idea of how things should work and how people have to get ahead. And again, it's making us think the guys we think are heroes maybe aren't, and the ones that we think are villains, well, we can kind of root for them too. They, again, if they're, as Chris, as you say every week, they're fighting against the system rather than the other characters.
Yeah, it's true. And it's so interesting how how there's some archetypes that I haven't quite seen directly in Star Wars, like Pendergast, the what is his official title as the ISB?
He's the boss.
The boss. Boss Pendergast.
Boss man.
Supervisor, whatever his title is. But he has like a professor. Major, there we go. Major he has like a professorial type vibe to him, like the way that he's like playing Blevin and Deidre off against each other. It reminded me of any type of movie in a set in a college, and you have like a professor, and you have like students arguing with each other, and the professor's playing their ideas off each other. It reminded me so much of that. Like, I mean, to an extent, and it's a comedy, but it reminded me of like the scenes with Victor Garber and Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde. Like Deidre's Reese Witherspoon. Of course, we all know what happened. Victor Garber ended up being quite the villain of that movie, and perhaps Pendergast is most certainly as well. But it's really reminded me of that.
Yeah, again, it's another great performance too by the fellow that plays him, Anton Lesser.
Yeah,
Anton Major, more like it. He that was so stupid. Everything about him makes me want to hate him. Like, he seems like he's such a natural villain. I remember him from Game of Thrones, where he was a villain, very much so on that show. And he carries himself like that stuck up Imperial officer that you want to hate. And yet he does things like side with Deidre in the scene against Blevin,
side with the person who's trying to take down the rebellion.
But he does it in such a way that you're like, yeah, okay, all right, I can kind of root for this guy. I can kind of get behind it. And what he said, like you said, the whole thing about him being a college professor. I enjoy a passionate, informed debate, or whatever he says at the end. An exchange of ideas, not even a debate.
Academic.
But then there's the scene between him and Deidre at the end where he's like, watch your back.
Yeah.
Like he's almost gonna like stab her in the back at some point. Or maybe he's telling her to, be on the lookout for Blevin to stab her in the back.
He's like, I'm the mediator here. You won this round, but this isn't over.
Or maybe he's saying, I won't always be here to, protect you, essentially.
Yeah, I think he understands how opportunistic things within the ISB are, and it's almost like he was watching, Deidre and Blevin, and it was almost exciting for him to think, okay, who's going to come out on top? Who's going to make the better argument? Who's going to convince me? And ended up, going with Deidre and just had this almost like proud moment just watching somebody kind of tear down somebody else. So it's just shows how much or how cutthroat, things are in the ISB and how everybody's just like scrambling to one up each other. And he seemed to very much enjoy.
Yeah, and he knows that like he allowing this what is essentially a extremely toxic work environment to exist actually is going to prove to be useful, is going to prove to give some results, because Deidre's just hard-nosed, like, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to prove that this is happening, I'm going to stop the rebellion, is going to happen. It's already working out for her. She is getting what she wants, and it will benefit the ISB and him. So, it's just fascinating to see all those things, and he knows, like, yeah, let them fight. Just sit back and watch.
But also, through all of this, he's perhaps sowing the seeds of his own destruction as well, because we know what ultimately and consistently brings down the Empire is a combination of sort of apathy at the higher levels and the competition at the lower levels, where people make choices not based on what is best, but based on what will get them ahead. And that's what Blevins doing. He's not interested in actually finding out the source of who stole the box from the beginning of from the first episodes. He's not interested in that. He's just interested in taking down Deidre. Whereas she's the one who's actually interested in, figuring out where the rebels are, what they're doing, what their plan is. And if that sort of thing continues, then, that's bad news. That's bad news for the Empire, because they're spending as much energy on fighting each other as they are on fighting the rebels. And ultimately, that's something that the rebellion will exploit. And, I think the best example of that is at the end of season 3 of Rebels, when Thrawn has them on the ropes. And then the other guy, Admiral Blandis, just kind of, steps in and says, no, we're doing things my way, and causes them to lose and lets the rebels escape. So it's great stuff sort of playing out through these episodes. Let's stick with the Empire a little bit and talk about Cyril and his role in this episode.
His high collar.
Yeah, his high collar. Looking good. Ben, speaking as a fashion designer yourself, what do you think of his attire in the episode?
It's quite exquisite,
Ben Hart, the Star Wars gentleman, is a fashion designer. That's the character you've been playing for years. We figured it all out.
For the love of God.
You made.
I do. It's funny. It's funny. I think if I had a criticism of this episode, it'd be like, can we get somewhere with Cyril? We're still back here. He's still eating cereal. He's still getting berated by his mom. Like, there's no progression here. But then it moves along. And, and I was disappointed not seeing it last week. So, I have no one to blame myself on this. But the fact of the matter is, it's just like, you have this guy that's just, it keeps piling on to him and realizing, how just utterly downtrodden he is. But I will say, I think I can't help but believe that Dedra dealing and trying to acquire information about the rebellion and him working in what seems to be like a data some kind of place. It's going to
cereal factory
at some point.
Has anyone watched the Apple TV show Severance?
Not yet.
Because he's basically working there. That's what it looks like to me. A more expansive version of that. I expect what's his face from Parks and Rec to show up any minute now. But Deidre and Cyril, I feel like, and we've been saying this for weeks, they've been on the slowest moving collision course of all time. Again, if this were the Mandalorian, they would have met weeks ago. But but this moves them now physically closer together. He is now on Coruscant, and she has the Ferrex file. So now they're slowly inching ever closer.
What they're doing here that is different than the Mandalorian and all the rest of Star Wars is what they do is they take their like secondary and tertiary characters and they just forget about them for like a week or a season or 2 years and then just bring them back and they're like, oh, you remember this person from this episode how many seasons ago? Well, they're back to help now, and you don't know what they've been doing the entire time. And I think it would have made sense if this was Favloni doing this episode or this season, they probably would have just not had any Cyril until the moment that he does get plugged back in with everybody. But instead, they wanted you to not kind of forget about this guy and to kind of still feel actively engaged and connected to the emotions behind his story when he does start playing a big role again. So they're giving you these little scenes in each episode. I think there maybe was one episode that he wasn't in, but pretty much every episode has had little scenes with him just to kind of touch base with him. And while they're mundane, it just keeps you still have that emotional connection that is still preserved so that, when he does play a big part, it just means so much more. And you don't have that kind of moment of whiplash, like, wait, who is this guy again? Like, where did he come from? Like, if you happen to skip the odd previous scenes, like apparently you're not supposed to do.
Not allowed. You have to hear Luthen every single week say, "Wouldn't you rather give it all for something real?"
Yeah. So, so I think it's brilliant. I love how they're just taking, even if it's a few minutes each episode to make sure that you're touching base. I wish they would have done that a little bit more with Mix or Bix with Bix. Like I kind of have been missing her, and I've been missing the stuff on Ferrex over the past few episodes, and I kind of wish that they had put in a little bit of time into that. But I understand it's difficult because that Ferrex plot was very self-contained and it was all about kind of what was happening on that planet. I think it's brilliant.
And I think part of it too is that we are still seeing a good portion of the show through Cassian's eyes. And I feel like that whole Ferrex plot, we saw it through Cyril's eyes and we saw it through Cassian's eyes. And, Cyril doesn't really have a connection with Bix or Marva or any of the other guys, not Tim because he's dead, but, the other ones. What's Cassian's buddy's name?
Yeah, what's that guy's name?
Brasso.
Brasso. What about Velch? What about Velch? Velch, the big
those
vested
legends.
alien.
Wood.
I love that vest.
When Cassian's away from that, we don't really check in with those characters as much. But what I will say about all the Cyril stuff is that even though those scenes are quite very domestic, very sort of run-of-the-mill work a day kind of things, we're learning little bits and pieces about him in every one of them. And we see where he comes from. We see where he gets his sort of drive from his mother berating him and constantly threatening to call Uncle Harlow, who we somehow didn't get to see. I thought
the biggest mystery of this show.
What? Okay. I will answer the question. So Harlow is dating Sly Moore, and they've just been off on an adventure together the entire time.
No.
Off screen.
What would their high lure? That'd be their shipper name. I'm a high lure shipper.
No, it's Slarlo.
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 Oh, jeez.
I'm starting my Twitter Stan account now. But the point I'm getting at though with Cyril is that like every scene, like sort of, we also learned that he's still got that bit of that obsession with Cassian. In this episode, I was joking with Ben about the whole collar thing, but it shows that even now he still has a drive. He still wants to stand out. He wants to be somebody that's respected. We go back to the first episode. He had his uniform tailored so that he would look, sharp compared to all those other people with their, baggy clothes. And then we sort of get the impression that he still wants to climb his way. He doesn't just want to clear his name. He wants to get back to being respected so that he can continue to climb that ladder. And he sees, Cassian as, the one who got in his way and as his way to clear his name. And again, it's just a matter of putting all those puzzle pieces together eventually to get us there.
Those scenes. Sorry, you go, Catherine.
Oh, I was going to say one thing that I really enjoyed that stood out to me a lot was that those final shots with Cassian and he gets his sentence and then they show Cyril and they kind of like
yes
and out and it's almost like each of them in their own ways like in a prison almost. It's just a cool way to kind of juxtapose those two characters and you kind of think, okay, well, what happens now? How do they get out of this and all of that? Because that's not what Cyril wants at all, because he is much more ambitious than that. And this is just a situation he's gotten put in, by his overbearing mother and the reclusive Uncle Harlow. So yeah, it's really interesting to think of how is this going to play out throughout the rest of the show and what's going to happen.
For sure. For sure. One thing I was going to say about those scenes as well, I was going to bring that up it was so symbolic, wasn't it? It was so symbolic. And I've got two thoughts on this scene of the Department of Standards, or what is that what that's called? I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Bureau of Standards.
Bureau of Standards, maybe that. Yeah. Just the symbolism of it, like what you were saying, Catherine. It's like it's so just a microcosm of what the Empire wants to be and is, hoping that it spreads to be just everyone almost turning into droids and just working the system. And it reminded me a lot of a book I wouldn't usually read, but I had to read for school, Brave New World. Not sure if it's too popular, but it's very, very, it's that's kind of a, what's the genre called? But it's
dystopian sci-fi.
Dystopian, yeah. There we go. Thank you. Which is like I really felt that in those scenes of just we're very robotic, just sticking to a system. There is no room to have your collar an inch taller than it should be. Like there's no room for that because everything has to be the same. So I love those scenes for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone sits at the same desk. Everyone wears the same uniform, and it's just this endless expanse of people just sitting there, just going through making sure that all the standards are being upheld.
That are standards. I love it. But the second thing I had to say about these scenes is let's talk about their computers that they get to use. It's like dual hand. It's like you get a touch screen per hand and they've got to do it at the same time. It's like, oh my God. And that's like that's like an ultimate gaming setup, I feel like that.
There's some really cool the technology world building is kind of expanding a little bit through this show. Like you have like legitimate television, not like holographic HoloNet, but actual like television on Coruscant, which further proves my theory about, how when you look at the technology in a certain planet, it's going to be more similar to ours, but anything that's interplanetary has to look different because of just the different logistics of sending a signal that far through like hyperspace transmitters and the like, and delayed timing. But, and then you have like something that almost looks like a stenography machine as well later in the judge's court. So that
and printing everything on floppy disks.
That's right.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yes.
That's right.
It's a pretty cool little, I like
It's
that.
lots of
Was that a scan doc? Was that the scan doc we've been hearing about?
I don't know. I still want to see some data tapes. That's still my favorite.
Yeah, and also there's some Auerbesh. I don't want to steal Ben's thunder. Is the Auerbesh part of your thunder, Ben?
No.
Okay, cool. So
that's such a weird question. That's just out of context.
Is the Auerbesh your thunder? Ben, what's your thunder? How would you define your thunder?
What's your thunder?
I'll be the thunder. Ben can be the lightning. Wait, no, it's the other way around. Anyway, the Auerbesh in this episode, there's it says like please present your chain code. So chain codes are mentioned in this episode. And then that random pizza joint is mentioned in Arbesh before it's spoken as well.
Pizza
joint.
Okay, whatever that's why I'm just calling it it sounds like pizza, but it's not pizza. It was like really close, like Pizzos. Is that what it was?
Yeah. There were the girl he was with at the end was like the name of a bunch of things.
Get me some pesos. like yeah. I mean,
that was Australian. Wow.
I was going for Cockney, but maybe Australian is closer to that. Man. I don't know. But yeah, no. When he's talking about like pizzos and this random Star Wars liquor that I'd never heard of, but apparently other people have. The pizzos is an Arbesh in an earlier scene next to it, right after it says present your chain code, which is interesting. So they're doing a lot of interesting things with technology and things that you wouldn't even, they don't draw attention to it. It's just, it's there if you want to look.
Yeah. Well, this has been Chris's connection corridor.
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 There's a competition here.
Yeah. Ben gets a corner, you get a corridor, and we'll see.
We're making a house. We're making a house of Star Wars connection here.
And I was going to mention, I was going to point out the data tape that I noticed in this episode, but I'll save it for Ben's
connection. Data tapes.
Okay. Well, sticking with Coruscant, let's talk about some of these Mon Mothma scenes, because it's some real interesting stuff. We'll start with the scene between her and Luthen. And Catherine, I'll throw this one over to you. What did you make of this? Speaking of spirited exchanges of ideas, this spirited exchange of ideas between Luthen and Mon Mothma.
Yeah, So I think previously we get this sense that they're both really on the same page about everything. She comes in and they converse with each other and, give each other kind of updates and all these things with the guise of her going into, collect antiques and all of these. And we saw something really different this time once he reveals to her, about what happened with the heist and everything. She gets very upset and leaves without her antique. You get the sense that she is not one of the people in the rebellion that believes in doing anything you can to succeed. She wants to do things in a way that will benefit people, but she doesn't want to hurt anybody. And I think some of that shows how desperate people on one side of this rebellion are, people with their, boots on the ground and all of that. We get this sense of just like extreme desperation. They're willing to do anything. They're willing to threaten families. They're willing to, kill people. They don't care that things are going to be extremely difficult for citizens from here on out because of, the Empire tightening its grip. And she very much does. Of course, she also is a senator, so she has that kind of, she's very diplomatic, but also you get the sense that this is not the same rebellion that she ends up in charge of. So I'm very curious as we go on how it's going to build up to that and if we're going to see that happen, because we are in a very, very different space emotionally and kind of with the whole mood of everything than we are once we do get to New Hope. And we see that contrast, I think, in that scene, just these two kind of philosophies about, what the rebellion should be and how they should be going about things. So I really, really enjoyed that exchange a lot.
Yeah, I love this as well. And it does bring up a lot of questions, like Catherine you were mentioning. Like the thing that's interesting about this is you kind of assume at how Mon Mothma reacts that she wants to go for a more diplomatic angle for things. And she is a senator, so why not try to influence things from the inside as a senator? But at the same time, she's still funding a rebel group and trying to get even more funds for a rebel group. And it's like, what does she expect? So like, I
think there's something really interesting in the wording of that scene.
Yeah.
Because she's talking about the network. And, it's probably a code word, obviously. But also it's a very non-violent word.
Yes, and that's I think you're onto it right there. I think that's the difference. Is like her vision, or her idea of a rebellion is not open warfare, and so I think that's the difference. And I think she wants. I think she has some idealism still in there, though, that might not be correct because. Despite that difference in kind of the flavor of the rebellion and the strategy, she doesn't want to rebel in such a way that it affects the entire population negatively. She almost wants to have this happen kind of off to the side, away from people so that people don't get hurt because she cares so much about people, Those conversations in previous episodes about how certain policies are going to cause people to starve. She clearly cares about people. So that's really fascinating coming against Luthen's strategy, because Luthen has a philosophy that I think is really interesting being seen in a Star Wars context, which is accelerationism. Luthen has the idea of, well, we got to make, the Empire seem worse in order for people to stand up against it. And I thought that was really amazing. I'm saying that, they're choking us too slowly for us to notice. Like, I thought that was a really brilliant observation and a really nuanced picture painting of the Empire, kind of a little bit more than I'm used to seeing, because we're used to seeing, the Empire of Tarkin and the Empire of A New Hope, where the fear will keep the systems in line, and it's all about their military might and just scaring people.
And we kind of saw I think we saw the turning point that sets them on that trajectory in this episode. Yularen's whole speech at the beginning of the episode is very much putting them on the path to becoming that. But the whole idea of the Empire moving slowly, of fascism moving slowly, that's Palpatine's plot from the beginning, right? The brilliance of the prequel trilogy and Palpatine's sort of plan through that is, it's not 10,000 Star Destroyers in the sky. It's not, 1,000 Sith Lords all lighting up their lightsabers at once and storming Coruscant. It's this slow, subtle takeover that takes place over decades, so that when the time comes that the Republic flips over to being the Empire, the changes are relatively small. The actual, we call ourselves the Empire now. But really, things are basically still running the same way. The Senate is still around. They're still voting on stuff. Whether or not those votes actually have much impact is debatable. But that was debatable through the prequel trilogy as well. Newt Gunray, it's in Attack of the Clones, right? What's his face? C.O. Bibble has, he goes on that little rant about it's outrageous that after 4 trials in the Supreme Court, Newt Gunray is still the Viceroy of the Trade Federation. Love that scene. But he's making a point there. It's been a decade since this horrific invasion of New York, of Naboo.
Wow.
And yet the guy who is ostensibly responsible for it is going to get off scot-free. And then
you think about it and you're going like, oh, that's ridiculous. People, that doesn't happen in the real world. Oh, wait.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that the Senate was not functioning, and it continues to not function.
Greedy, squabbling delegates.
Exactly. Right up until the point that Palpatine and Tarkin just say, yeah, we don't need it anymore. We're fine. We're all good from here.
I love just the overall presence that Palpatine himself has in this episode without appearing, with no Ian McDiarmid hologram or anything, just people talking about it.
I spoke with Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like Mon Mothma, like talking about like, I've learned from Palpatine. You don't see the rock. You're looking at the rock. You don't see the knife in your throat. I'm like, yes,
amazing. Oh.
Yes.
But it's so fascinating because it's that sort of duality of Mon Mothma, because she comes from the sort of the Padme Bale school of thought about the Senate, which is they really believe in democracy, and they really believe that they need to do things the right way. And Luthen doesn't really care about doing things the right way. He cares about results. He cares about getting stuff done. And I think Mon Mothma eventually reaches a point where she is willing to accept that results sometimes matter more than process. That's, I think, where she's at in Return of the Jedi. Ultimately, her goal is to get back to a place where the process matters. But over the course of the installments in her story thus far, I think we've seen a progression of her along this journey, from this point where she's sort of working behind the scenes to fund the network, quote unquote, still thinking that they aren't going to actively make things worse for people as they go, to Rebels, where she has a little showdown with Saw Gerrera, where she basically says, as long as I think it's even remotely possible that there can be a peaceful solution, we're going to try and seek it out. And, as the audience, we're watching that going, you're not going to get a peaceful solution from Emperor Palpatine. That ain't happening. Sorry. Saw's wrong about a lot of things, but he's right about this. And, Saw kind of hits her with a line that's, similar to what Luthen says in this episode. He says to her in that Rebels episode, he says, I hope, Senator, after you've lost and the Empire reigns over the galaxy unopposed, you'll find some comfort in the knowledge that you fought according to the rules.
Yeah.
Saw Gerrera. Yeah. So I by the way, I'll just quickly, the reason I have those quotes at hand is because I wrote about this back in August in my Substack, Hoth off the press. So you can go back and read that.
Lovely.
You can go and read that article, as well as my preview of the Toronto Maple Leafs season, which I somehow forced some Game of Thrones references into it. Thank you. There on the screen, Hoth off the press. Go find it. But the point I'm getting at is, she's still clinging to this idea that, we're going to do things the right way. Even in Rogue One, right? Jyn shows up, she makes her presentation to the council, and they vote on it, and they vote not to do anything. And she's like, yeah, that's kind of it. Sorry, Jyn. That's just how it's got to be. But then when everybody leaves to go to Scarif, she's kind of got this little smile. Like, she's like, oh yeah, I knew this day was going to come. I knew somebody was going to have to force our hand, and we're going to have to do things, quote unquote, the wrong way if we want to win. And rebellions are a lot about sacrificing, people, but sometimes you wind up sacrificing your ideals in order to succeed. And ultimately, and Din made this point when he was on a couple of weeks ago, all rebellions are seeded with their own seeds of destruction are within, the sacrifices you make to win. And ultimately, that's the same goes for the Rebel Alliance and the New Republic, because New Republic just falls back into a lot of the same problems that the Old Republic had. And that's how you wind up with the First Order in the sequel trilogy.
Right, and that's why Mon Mothma is the most worthy leader for the rebellion. Imagine how things might have turned out if someone like Luthen or Saw Gerrera had ended up as chief of state of the Alliance to Restore the Republic. How would that?
The First Order would have happened a lot sooner.
Probably so.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating to see, and that scene is just brilliant. Like the whole back and forth they have between them. The acting is superb, but just the whole idea of, and it's kind of a Jedi philosophy. It's almost like Mon Mothma is more Jedi than some Jedi in regards to like violence is the last case scenario, is the absolute last thing we want to do. She's not resorting to violence because she wants to. She's resorting to violence because she has to in the end, and she fights it all the way to the end. Whereas people like Luthen and Saw Gerrera, they relish in the violence. They relish in the killing. Look, the first thing Luthen does after he hears about what goes in Aldani, he laughs and he smiles. And we understand, like, yeah, he appreciates this going on. We just saw a bunch of people die, and this horrible thing happened just to steal a bunch of money, and he's relishing in it. And she is horrified by it. That's what makes her a good person, and kind of not Luthen, not so much. And yeah, despite whatever misgivings she might have about what Luthen is doing, she is still all in.
she still has the party. She kind of threatens him a little bit, like maybe I'll call off my meeting with my contact. But ultimately, she still goes through with it. She still meets up with her childhood friend, Tay, who's like, ooh, I'm so edgy with my anti-imperial stance. And she's like, bitch, please, settle down.
That was great.
It's so good.
I'm actively funding all that stuff going on all day. And I want you to help me do it. I thought that whole back and forth was fascinating between the two of them. Ben, I'll throw this over to you. What'd you make of the exchange between Mon and Tay?
Tay Python. All right.
Sure. Wow. Why not?
I'm just saying random things that sound like other random things.
That's the sort of thing you can expect.
That's my job, okay? That's my job, okay? Don't take away, okay? I need a little bit of job security on this
It's
podcast.
not my fault. I'm catching it.
I know. I do have that effect sometimes. I love their whole scene and her constantly saying, smile, like, just keep up the whole thing, like, and and kind of going further into this and how risky she is, like doing this, of course, in the presence of so many people that probably hate her and would want to, and her being this someone who is just all about the Empire, or is at least trying to put across this idea of she's kind of okay with the Empire, but she's kind of not. And, I love her line about, I didn't know I could confide in you until you said that thing. And her kind of letting it all out, and then still, and him saying like, you haven't answered my question. And she's like, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm not, you're better off not knowing this stuff, but basically we need money. So whatever. And the fact, like, it would have been cool for Tay, whatever his name is, to like be a character that we know, or either from Legends or whatever. I know there's Garmbeb El Iblis, who is a character from the EU that goes way back, who's I think is a fellow senator, part of whatever else. To see him show up or whatever else, but the fact that we don't know this guy, and that we don't know, is he a plant? Is he a bad guy? Is he gonna rat her out to the Empire? Like, there's so many unanswered questions, and the intensity is the risk in, okay, she's telling this guy things that she's only told two other people in the galaxy. What kind of risk is she putting herself at? And she's got all the stuff, she's got her family, all this hanging in the balance. What could go wrong? Everything.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about Tay being, a plant, a double agent. But as soon as you said it, Ben, it would make a hell of a lot of sense, especially with all of the focus on her husband being the untrustworthy one.
Red herring.
It's a red herring, And what if this guy is actually the one
because we know they're watching her. She knows they're watching her. She knows her driver's an ISB plant. She knows she's being monitored. That's why she's being so careful. So if they're watching her, who knows how far they would go.
Every spy drama or political thriller has, the person who's close to the hero that is actually going to betray them. And I feel like this would be a much more impactful betrayal than what's her face husband, who she doesn't like and we don't like. I'm still trying to figure out how her daughter figures all into all of this, but I'm starting to think she might be the one to actually figure it all out and be like, Mom, you got to listen to me. And Mon Mothma will be like, you've just been a sullen, nasty teenager for 6 episodes. Why am I going to listen to you? And then, the sullen, nasty teenager tends to be right.
I have a theory about how kind of Mon's path is going to go for the rest of the season, and kind of where we finish with her at the end of the season. I definitely think it's like it's either her family or Tay is going to understand what she's doing, find out all that the full extent of how she's helping this rebellion, funding this what does she call it, the committee or something, this group,
The network.
the network, which is the rebellion network. They're going to find that out, and they're not going to agree with it, but because they care about her, they don't want to just be like, we're just going to turn you into the Empire. That they're going to be like, you stop this, or like we don't. I don't know, like, you know, it's going to be an
Give her
ultimatum.
an ultimatum.
Yeah, it's going to be an ultimatum, and she'll just kind of be forced underground. Because obviously, when we see her in Rebels and in A New Hope, it's like she's the leader of the rebellion, but she's, especially in Rebels, she's trying to still be like a diplomat and still kind of juggle that. I think it's just going to be this decline of. Wait, is this after Rebels? Are we after Rebels now?
Sort of at the same time.
We're
Same
pretty
time,
much
is it?
during Rebels.
During, okay.
Which,
well,
by
that
the
makes
way-
sense then.
By the way, if this were a Favloni show, next week when Cassian is in prison, he'd meet Ezra's parents.
I'm just waiting for Empire Day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, actually, on Luthen's little radio he's got there, like surely he has to catch Ezra's little call there.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Come on. I feel like that's setting up. But I definitely think Mon is being set up that the people close to her are gonna find out about it and like disagree with her and be like, kind of maybe be the ones to say, hey, like, we're for the Empire. If you're not going to be for it, we're not going to dub you in, but you can't like do this. And she's going to just be forced underground.
Do you think that the at some point there's going to be this big moment in the show where you realize that there's been this like microcosmic focus on, or microscopic focus as well, on Mothma and Luthen, and it's kind of giving this idea like, oh, this is the rebellion, when unbeknownst to them, it's just happening all around them and they're just not connected to it. And then at some point they realize that this is maybe how like Bail and Ahsoka
They hear Ezra's call.
Here's the thing. Luthen is to Vel and Cassian and the crew on Aldhani what Ahsoka was to the Ghost crew.
Yeah.
He's essentially another fulcrum, and that's how they're doing this. And they don't. That's why they don't tell him all these things. And that's the whole thing with like what's established in Rebels is the fact that like they're communicating with this fulcrum person. They don't know who they are, and they're like, okay, we can't tell you anything because you might think. And then Kanan gets captured. He's like, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about a larger rebellion. He's telling the truth because of that.
And Mothma says, you know, I'm about to tell you something that only 3 other people know. And she says 3 people. So it's hard to discern if she's talking about herself or not. But say she's not talking about herself. Well, you've got Luthen. You've got Luthen's assistant, whose name I'm forgetting. Clea. That's right, Clea. And then, but could the third person be Bail? Organa?
Possibly.
Could be at a situation where maybe Mothma and Bail are at the top of the thing, and they're like, let's have our networks not know about each other. Let's work in parallel, but not connect them in case one of us goes down.
Well, that's one of those things that's at play a lot in the first season of Rebels, which is, you know, there's all of these pockets, and the Ghost crew is a pocket of Rebels, and they, you know, only Hera is allowed to be connected to the network. Only Hera is allowed to talk to Fulcrum. And the idea is that everybody is being kind of kept separate. And I think that the Rebel Alliance is just that. It's an alliance of rebels. And what we've sort of learned over the last sort of decade or so of Star Wars storytelling is that it's a lot of pockets of rebels. And what Luthen is out there doing is he's trying to bring those pockets together. He's trying to find the connections that can work. And he knows it's not time for a full, you know, Scarif, Yavin kind of incident. But he wants these rebels to be in connection so that when the time comes, when they need to do something where they have to connect them, there is a network. They have the means to bring them together. And again, we go back to Rebels. That's sort of how the first season of that show ends, right? Because, you know, Kanan gets captured and it looks like it's just going to be the Ghost crew going to try and rescue him from the Grand Inquisitor. And it's Chopper who puts that call to Ahsoka and says, hey, we need some help. Like, this is a valuable asset. We cannot lose it. It's time to call in. If not the full network, at least part of it.
Wow, perfectly said, Ben. Well said.
That was a direct quote.
Yeah.
One of Chopper's classic lines.
Oh, jeez, man.
So, sticking with Coruscant and speaking of Clea, actually, let's talk about the scene between Clea and Vel, because again, this is the consequences of the previous several episodes. And Hannah, I'll throw this one over to you. What did you make of these two characters and their interaction in this episode?
I came out of it more confused than going into the conversation. It was interesting to see. We've seen and met Clea many times, and in this conversation, she really shows her. I don't know if it's her beliefs, but just what she's doing and supporting. The way she says, Tamarin gone and Nemec, they knew what they had to do, or something along the lines of they had to die for us for the cause. I think she says. I also found it interesting when Vel was like, "What about Skeen?" And then she was like, "Oh, we knew he was shifty." It's just it really shows that her, and I'm assuming her and Luthen have very similar kind of approaches of just this quite aggressive, or very more similar to Saw Gerrera, really. Very aggressive. We need to use this is all for good kind of thinking, but really showed her colors, that she is not just an artifact assistant, that she is kind of quite involved in this as well. It's interesting to see where this will take us. I think I feel like this storyline might be a little predictable, where Vel, maybe in the next couple episodes, is maybe Vel's the one to find Cassian in prison, and as she meets him and confronts him, she doesn't kill him, and then they end up teaming up and coming back. I feel like that's what happened. But yeah, I kind of left it with more questions, being why is Clea so involved? Is Vel gonna go do this thing? But it was interesting. It was very, very interesting.
I didn't recognize either of them in that scene. I was very surprised.
Same. They both look very different.
Yeah.
And then I see Vel, and I was like, "Wait, what?" That was really neat how they, just kind of made them seem very different from, what the way we see them in the past. Cool. But with that, I'm gonna have to head out, guys. But thank you all so much for having me on. Definitely awesome.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you for being here. Catherine, before you go, do you want to give us your final thoughts on the episode and a score out of 10?
Yeah, okay. I would probably rating things is very difficult to me, because I'm like, well, what am I comparing it to? But my first thought is just to say an 8 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that you could definitely say it was a little lacking on the physical action. Although, with the dialogue and everything, there definitely was a lot happening. I just think it's, when you set it against the episode 6, it does seem like, they're kind of, I'm not going to say it's a letdown. It wasn't a letdown because I loved it so much. It just seems very different. And you're just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't, episode 6 at all. And also, this isn't part of any of the arcs. It was kind of its own thing, almost like Ben said, like an epilogue. So, I did appreciate it, kind of its own thing, but yeah, I think just putting it against episode 6, it did kind of seem, a little slower, but then again, I really did like the character development and everything too. So.
All right. 8 out of 10, perfectly valid and well-reasoned score out of 10 there. Well, Catherine, thank you very much for being on. If people want to check out what you're doing, keep up with you, see your reactions perhaps to Andor and more, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, they can hop on over to the Culture Slate Reacts YouTube channel. I do reactions every week. Sometimes we air them twice a week, depending on what else I'm doing in between shows or alongside shows. So Yeah, it's a lot of fun over there. So
Absolutely. Check it out. Well, thank you, Catherine, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show again soon.
awesome. That'd be great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right.
So continuing with this scene between Clea and Vel, there's sort of two things that come out of it. One, as we were saying there, kind of sets up perhaps puts in motion the wheels for the next story, which is Vel having to kill Cassian, or going after him, which is interesting. After Luthen goes through everything to recruit him, now he's like, all right. Now they're like, all right, just off him. We don't need him anymore.
Well, I think there's some subtext in here because there is a line that Vel says. I think she said it like twice. I was like expecting him to be here, and I'm assuming the him she's talking about is Luthen. And I'm like wondering, like, why did they make it such a point to say that line? It wasn't just to get that kind of throwaway line. Saying like, we shouldn't even be meeting ourselves. Like that couldn't have been it. I feel like, I apologize. Clea. I feel like Clea might be going behind Luthen's back and giving this order because she might think that, Luthen might, still be thinking Cassian can be turned to the light side.
Good point.
Well,
that's a good point. Huh?
And Luthen did say in the episode before the heist, I said I was uncareful with Cassian, and that Cassian could be traced back to him.
Yeah.
So it might be Clea thinking, well, I got to clean up his mess again.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna off this guy, so then we don't have to worry about him anymore. Maybe he's a useful asset, but maybe he could be turned, or he could be captured, which he is. And if they look hard enough, that'll lead him back to Luthen and the whole network.
It'll depend on where this goes, in regards to what Luthen and Cassian's relationship will be going forward. I kind of assumed that Luthen would be kind of a de facto apprentice, mentor kind of relationship between them. They really weren't together all that long. It was just kind of like, hey, go do this thing, and then they haven't seen each other since. So where that goes, I don't know. I think that because there is a shot in the trailer of Vel on Ferrix. I'm pretty sure. I think Vel is gonna go after Marva to try to bait Cassian. I think Vel may be the reason that Marva doesn't make it. Just gonna throw that out there.
Wow.
Damn. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would certainly be interesting if that's the way they go. The other aspect of this scene is sort of a kind of tragic element, which is, Clea says, I have to try. It's just running through all the character names in my head.
We could see it. We could see the strain
turning. I was like,
wow.
No, we're not talking about Mon Mothma anymore.
Close.
No,
Midra Clarva.
But yeah,
Cassian,
Luther, Tay,
Leavenmore.
Yeah, they've all just become one character.
Clevin Pander,
Leavenmore Slide.
Yeah. But Clea says to Vel, Gorn, Nemec, and Taramyn, they'll all be remembered. And it's kind of heartbreaking because they kind of won't. The tragedy of
I will remember you.
Do not get us copyright strikes. I swear. If that's what gets us in trouble. No. But the sort of the tragedy of a rebellion at this point in the story is that it's Aldhani's a big operation, but it's no Scarif, it's no Yavin, it's no Death Star 2, it's no Jakku. It's just something that it's something that had to happen to get to those points. But the names we remember are Luke Skywalker, they're Han Solo, they're Princess Leia. they're not Taramyn and Nemik and Gorn. We didn't even know they existed until last week. And now, because it's a TV show and everything, we will remember those characters, of course. But
will you
when
remember me?
All around me are familiar faces.
Ben, do you have a song you want to sing? Do you want to just get in on this as well?
I'm trying to think.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
I'm trying to make a serious point over here.
He's talking about remembering people.
You three.
Hey, don't drag me into this. I didn't sing nothing.
But the point I'm making is that this moment in the rebellion, these are not going to be the heroes that people tell stories about. These are not going to be the people who are remembered. These guys all just sacrificed themselves, and yes, it meant something. It absolutely meant something, but their names are lost to history. Essentially, there's no ship in the New Republic that's the Nemik. There's no Taramyn. There's nobody's name, and maybe they'll get a post office on their home planet named after them. But it's really not. They're not going to be the. It is, believe it or not, in this ridiculous continent of ours. I think it's more a thing in the States actually than it is here. But the point of making is that they had to sacrifice themselves, and Vel, I think, wants to remember them as the great heroes that they were, but the rest of the galaxy won't. And I found that scene really, really kind of tragic in a way.
Yeah.
Star
Wars, nothing
but Star Wars. It's got Wookiees and Princess Leia too.
Oh no!
We broke him.
No! I'm
gonna go full teacher mode and just say I'm just gonna sit here until you guys calm down. When you guys are ready, just gonna wait.
It's your time, not mine.
I'm over the corridor over here, so in the corner already.
I love that, the corridor. It's just in the corridor with all this information. I love it.
I don't have a corridor pass, so I'm really, really edgy. Mr. Jones.
Wow. Oh wow.
Our audio listeners are gonna love this.
You have to watch it. If you listen on audio, keep doing that, but also listen to it and then go watch the visual of these only these moments specifically.
Now we're in 37 minutes.
Exchanging of looks.
Okay. We should actually talk about Cassian in the Andor show.
Yeah, my whole opening monologue was about that. But
no, we have touched on it, certainly.
That's good.
We have touched on it, certainly, but let's talk a little bit more about it. Ben, I'll throw it to you. What do you think of Cassian's? Let's start with his return home, and then we'll talk about his trip to the beach.
Right. Yeah, I mean, how tragic is it that, and how ironic is it that he comes home with these high hopes of, hey, we're getting out of here. Like, I've got enough. I finally did it, Mom. I finally made it, Mom. I went and robbed a bunch of people and killed some people. I got a bunch of money, and I finally made it. And he's coming home to tell his mom that, hey, we're finally gonna be all right, and I can take care of you. I can get you off this stinking planet and cold planet and go somewhere where it's nice. And the one thing that he did inspires his mom to say, no, I'm not leaving. And, it's just this juxtaposition of, like, he finally got the money, but now he's inspired his mom indirectly. And I think someone said earlier, that you can hear him trying to say something, him wanting to tell her, hey, look, this is what I did. But, and him just, the whole idea. Did you hear about Aldani? What about it? Like, he's very, very standoffish about it. But and that scene, man, there's something. There was earlier scenes in like the first couple episodes where there is something magical when you put Fiona Shaw and Diego Luna in a room together. That is just chef's kiss, beautiful. And this one, especially, I mean, it freaking brought me to tears. Like it genuinely, like this scene hit me so hard because, it's just, it is that. Again, that ultimate, you can't stay and I can't go, and here's how it is, and and who knows? We don't know. It is scary. I'm not saying I want to see Vel kill Marva, okay? I'm not saying that, okay? But I just know that Marva doesn't seem to be around when Rogue One comes around, and and her willingness to stand up for the rebellion is great. And the whole flashback, getting some closure on Clem and seeing that whole happens. And also, they did a really weird thing with the flashbacks. I didn't even catch it until I literally read a YouTube comment. But like, there's young Cassian in the flashback doing the thing, and when he goes and he grabs the stick and he goes and runs the clone troopers, and we're assuming that's what happens when he gets in the juvenile prison. Like older Cassian is kind of in the dream experiencing it, which is something I didn't even catch. Which is really cool way to do it. Reminded me of what they kind of did in Stranger Things and whatever else, with kind of like the whole, kind of putting the adult version of the character into the shoes of the younger, but really cool. And just, obviously heartbreaking scene that I think was one of my favorites so far in the series.
B2 Emo continuing to be, just another classic Star Wars droid, bringing out the emotions in everybody. What's also interesting about Marva's scene is she proves Luthen right. She everything she says, that's exactly what Luthen wants everybody doing. That's how he wants them reacting. That's how he wants them to think going forward.
Yeah.
So. A very sort of poignant moment there, and Mike McCormick in the chat bringing up the line. That's just love that Marva tells. That
was good.
Tells Cassian. Yeah, great stuff. And we also have the scene between Cassian and Bix. Chris, I think you talked about this a little bit in your monologue, but is there anything, do you want to sort of go over this scene a little bit? What do you think of their reunion and what we got about their relationship in this scene?
I mean, it's this show, we definitely noticed in the first few episodes that they were not spoon feeding us information. And that you were just watching things happen, and there really wasn't a lot of expositionary dialogue in it. And you just had to infer whatever was going on, even plot things you had to infer. And this was another one where, like, they didn't go out of their way to just explain what their entire history together was. There was just a few lines in here and there that were like small hints towards it. So this definitely gave you a lot more. Again, this was such a huge episode for learning more information about Cassian and learning about a previous relationship that he had. And now for sure, 100% sure that's what happened. And man, like, I feel so bad for her because, like, gosh, she's in a relationship with this guy, and then, it ends for who knows why. And then he ends up doing all this criminal activity that she's kind of aiding and abetting a little bit. But then he oversteps, and then he does something dumb. And then it results in her current partner being killed, despite that partner potentially being dumb.
R.I.P. Tim.
R.I.P. Tim. So the one name that you not confuse with other characters because it's to the point.
Tim. With two M's. Tim.
That's why. So yeah, I mean, I still man, she's got to be still reeling over all of this, and you can see that conflict within her. It's incredible, and it makes me wonder what they're gonna do with her character, because I wasn't sure if we'd ever see her again after she disappeared for a little bit, and we weren't touching back towards her and these kind of B and C plots. I was wondering if she would still factor into the show, and I was kind of a little disappointed if she wouldn't. So I'm really glad that she's back. And I feel like this scene shows, I especially establishing that, you know, Marva's establishing a network of her own on Ferrix. I think it definitely suggests that Bix is probably going to be fighting the Empire at some point, and we're gonna see it. And I think that's really exciting. And again, Cassian seems unattached in Rogue One, and there's that very subtle thing with Jyn that is so subtle that it might not even be there. But like probably Bix doesn't have the brightest future either, along with Marva. So I think there might be some tragic stuff going down that might get George R.R. Martin really excited about the coming episodes. Could happen.
More names that will be lost to history. Yeah.
But you know what makes me? It's one of these great moments where something in Star Wars, like we get some sort of piece of information that applies to a piece of media that we've already seen, but it's ahead in the timeline. When in Rogue One, when Andor is lining up to shoot Galen into, you know, he's got his sniper out, locking it in. And he has that moment, you know, before he does it, and he kind of backs away, and you can see him thinking, and he stands down and he backs away. Is he thinking of his own, you know, adoptive parental influence? And he's thinking about how someone killed his father, and for what reason? And is that the right reason? Maybe that's what he's thinking there in Rogue One.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
That's what he experienced as a child.
Wow.
Yeah. If anyone can relate to Jyn losing her father to the Empire, maybe it's him.
Yeah.
Maybe it's him. I mean, yeah. And you know, really in a brutal way too, because apparently his father just hung in the town square for weeks on end.
That's amazing. That's amazing how they kind of built that up, because they mentioned that. They mentioned that in previous dialogue that's something that would happen. So they kind of like built a that already in your head, and then you see part of it like that. That was really meticulous writing, because that did not need to be there. Like they did not need to do that, and they did.
Yeah. It's great. It's well done. Also, you know, just in the subtlety of the writing, you know, we saw in the trailer the clone troopers, and we talked all the flashbacks of the Republic and all this stuff. That's not the Republic. This is like Bad Batch timeline of, you know, clone troopers, you know, fulfilling the role of the stormtroopers. You know, one of the extras yells, you know, "Long live the Republic," as the clone troopers walks by, and I think we're meant to believe it's one of the guys that then starts throwing rocks at him. So interesting little bit of connective tissue there. One other thing in the meeting with Bix, in the scene with Bix, Cassian pays his debts. Like a Lannister, he pays his debts, and Andor always pays his debts. And, you know, Bix says to him, you know, everybody blames you for what went down. And we talked about this in previous episodes, how Cassian, you know, people are kind of annoyed by Cassian on Ferrix. They see him as a nuisance. They see him as an annoyance. Nobody really likes him. And so naturally they would want to blame him for this happening. And, you know, one of the things they dislike about him is that, you know, he's always borrowing money and not paying it back. Well, in that moment, he leaves that money to pay people back. And if word gets out that, you know, he's trying to make things right, maybe when he shows up needing some help, people, you know, Brasso and Velch and all those other guys might be a little bit more inclined to fight alongside their old buddy after he's at least made an effort to make things right. Yeah. Then we go to the beach. Go to the beach. Did you think for a second that was Scarif?
No, this was Space Miami.
All that was missing was a Pitbull soundtrack, and it would have been great.
They're pretty close to that with that synth thing going on.
Yeah,
that was pretty bopping.
Mm-hmm. Hannah, what did you
bopping.
Make?
Oh wow!
Yeah, Hannah, what did you make of this whole sequence on whatever that planet is The space
Now,
Miami.
this is where we come to my not so positive kind of just feelings of the show. I didn't overly like this scene too much, to be honest.
Okay.
For a main reason being the aesthetic. Now, it wasn't actually the fact that we were on a beach side or like I don't believe beaches exist in Star Wars. It's not because of that. I do think they exist. But there was something. Well, that's funny. There was something about the aesthetic of the aliens, and I do also have to mention there was in where is it? It's in Coruscant, and it's like I think it's in the ISB building, but it's also in like the traveling terminal kind of thing. There's a type of droid that their face kind of looks like a kettle in a way. It's kind of upward. It kind of looks strange. That just to me, I'm like that does not look anything like Star Wars. I just was like that. It looks like it's from like the Fifth Element or like just some sort of 80s sci-fi. It did not look Star Wars at all to me. It felt like I said to someone, some of the robots in the background aliens looked like it was Aldi Star Wars. I don't know if you get what I mean by that, but it's just like I feel like
I, for one, like Aldi's food.
Because it's like it's the same. It's like the same thing, but it's like it's food. You can eat it, but it's like it's a different brand, but it's so close to being the brand, but it's not.
It's like the knockoff version.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like instead of Cocoa Pops.
Funny, I think I know what droid you're talking or droids, the paradroids at the when Cleo walks through the thing. It's funny.
Yeah.
I actually kind of agree with you. I think it's kind of a weird design. But the thing is, I swear we've seen them before in another Star Wars project, either Solo or something. I can't actually.
I think
put my
there's
finger
an
on it.
alien that has that facial shape. I think there's like some sort of a creature that has that face shape. I don't know, but anyway, yeah. So that robot and also something about this. I'm just gonna call them Miami scenes. There was something about the aliens that I couldn't. They just look like aliens to me. They just look like
there weren't many
random
common Star Wars aliens. I think that's one of the things that has been. I feel like Star Wars it's either too far one way or the other with aliens, where either all the aliens are aliens you've seen before, and they're the really popular ones. Like there's 10 Rhodians and 10 Ithorians and a bunch of Oculus and just a bunch of the top few most visible Cantini aliens all over the place. There's that, and then there's like what we saw in the sequels and then some of the other Star Wars projects where it's like all completely new and you don't see any of the familiar ones. And I feel like it's really hard to strike a balance where there's enough new ones and enough diversity that it's believable, but then not just so many new ones that you just don't feel like it's Star Wars. And I think that that's something that I guess we notice it by not noticing it when they're right. We just forget about it. And it's just only when it's off that we notice it. So I'm sure some projects do get it better, but yeah, I agree. I've had kind of an issue. This is the one problem that I've had with the show. And I've given them, it's one of the problems that I feel like there's a reason behind it. And so I think that they're playing, like 5D chess with it. So I'm not going to be critical, but that is that Coruscant has a massive lack of aliens. A massive. If you compare the Coruscant and the prequels to the Coruscant in this show, it is night and day. It is so different in the amount of aliens that are no longer on Coruscant. And the only thing I could think of is that they're really going for that thing that was very much propped up by legends, and I don't know how much of it made it into canon per se. That idea that the Empire is speciesist against aliens, and they're very human supremacists, and I'm wondering if they are purposely trying to have as few aliens as possible on Coruscant to kind of suggest that at least the top levels of Coruscant are kind of being purged of non-humans, and that's what's going on. I'm wondering if that's why they're doing that.
It's funny, ironically,
there's way more.
Ironically, that you say that. I actually agree. I think they may be. I think I'm more when it comes to the show, I'm more erring on the side of, if anything, if I have questions about anything, or I'm like, they missed that, there's not enough aliens, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, it's deliberate. It's something they're doing intentionally. But there is one alien dude when they're going in and he's getting processed to go into prison. There's an alien dude in the background wearing Imperial armor.
Yeah, the bailiff. The bailiff is, I think.
Right. So it's just like,
that's cool. That's nice.
Yeah, they'll allow like one or two aliens to work for them.
I mean, obviously Thrawn is there, but again, it's like the kind of Legends backstories that Thrawn had to work harder to get into his position because of not being a human.
Speaking of Thrawn, for a moment I thought I saw Thrawn in this episode.
Ooh.
In the in the bureau.
No fan service, Tony Gilroy. No fan service.
In the bureau, it looked like there was a guy with blue skin and dark hair sitting there doing some work at one of those depressing computer terminals.
Joel says that it's the human supremacy thing's been toned down in current canon, but it is still mentioned, but toned down. So it's still a thing. So even if they're going off of current canon, they could still be correct in this kind of odd mixture of species in certain spots.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting stuff. We do in this sequence. We do see a very familiar looking droid. The debut of the KX droids.
Yes.
Oh yes.
For a second, I thought, is this how we're introducing K2? And then it spoke, and I'm like, that's not our buddy, not our future buddy. But yeah, fun to see them. This is the sequence when Cassian gets arrested that to me feels the most Mandalorian of all of Andor. And again, it's not I don't mean that necessarily as a bad thing, but it's one of those things that just kind of happens. And to advance the plot, to set up the story for next week of Cassian in jail. And I know, it is sort of fulfilling a point in the story of, this is the Empire's laws, new laws, the gourd or the port or whatever the thing was called, being put into place, and so Cassian's sort of falling victim to it. But it was done in such a haphazard, slapsticky way that felt tonally very different from this show, and would have felt very much at home in the cold open for a Mandalorian episode.
That was very much the beach cop trooper. Was very much, it had the same energy as the scout troopers who punched Grogu. That's the same. It's the same. A little
bit, and so did the K2 droid as well. Is he told me to hang. So
whoa.
Hold you way up high.
But I like the establishment of the KX droids this early, because I'm assuming we may or may not get K2 by the end of the season. I think they may have been lying to us partially. I think we may get them by the end of the season. Obviously,
there's no COD in my Star Trek movie.
I mean, if JJ were making this show.
Oh my God, no! Don't even think about it.
If JJ were making the show, somehow Cyril would be K2. Just some way, somehow that would happen.
Get killed in his brain.
Mother, I am a droid now. Are you proud of me now, Mother?
That's what Uncle Harlow does. Is he turns people into droids.
Uncle Harlow.
Yeah, man.
Uncle Harlow is K2.
Oh,
well, there we go.
Come on, solved it.
Obvious. That was
oh my God.
Star Wars. I should write Star Wars.
Absolutely.
But I like the establishment of the KX droids as they're just kind of everywhere. They're just there, exist. And because we only really saw it was kind of established in Rogue One that there's multiples of those things, but it's kind of okay, K2 is this new, unique design droid we've never seen before, and anybody that sees one is like, oh, it's K2SO, and just further kind of throws down kind of the gauntlet on there's millions of these things. The whole point of K2 is the fact that he can just blend in anywhere, that there's a million of him that look exactly the same, and you can just go into a situation and be totally camouflage.
Well, he makes the point in Rogue One when Cassian tells him to wait outside. He's like, the city's under Imperial occupation. I'm an Imperial droid. I'd fit in just fine. All right. That's everything I've got for this episode. Let's do some super chats, and then I think it's time to head to the corner. So super chats, first up, surprise, Joel Davis. He says, I love the Mothma Luthen scene and how you understand both points of view. Personally, I side more with Luthen in the long run, as sad as it will be. Yeah, I mean, this is what we were talking about earlier. You know, the beauty of that scene is you can completely understand where both of them are coming from. And they both make some valid points. It's up for everybody to decide who they agree with more. Next up, also from Joel, Yularen being Anakin's officer during the Clone War makes so much sense now. Both have fascist tendencies, and now those tendencies can flourish in the Empire.
That's true.
Yeah, that was something I found a little jarring when Yularen first showed up on Rebels. I was like, whoa, this guy seemed cool for so long.
But then you had to remember where you first saw him. He was on the freaking Death Star at that freaking conference table, around the table with a bunch of fascists on a big planet-destroying weapon. So he was always on the way to being a big old baddie.
Mm-hmm. And finally, from Joel, with Andor ratings being up in the air due to miscalculated data, apparently, do you think we'll ever get another writer of Tony Gilroy's caliber in Star Wars again? I've been trying to avoid talking about the ratings because I don't understand what that stuff means. And there's a lot of factors beyond just how many people are watching that goes into deciding if you want to make more stuff like what's on. And one of the factors is viewer retention. For as much as you want to have a lot of people watching, you also want to have a lot of people tuning in every week. You don't want to just have a bunch of people watch the first episode and go, meh, not for me. There's a story about Game of Thrones when it first aired. You know, the pilot airs and has decent enough numbers, nothing out of this world, nothing to suggest that it's going to be the cultural phenomenon that it is. And then the next week, it's like the exact same number of viewers. And the showrunners, Benioff and Weiss, are like, oh my God, we didn't grow. This is bad news. HBO is going to cancel the show. And HBO said, no, you retained all your viewers. So everybody who watched the show said, yes, I like this. I'm going to keep watching. That's important too, because that will also eventually, pay dividends, which is what we see in the end with that show. So I don't know what to make. There's all this reporting now about how many people are watching this show versus Book of Boba and Kenobi and all that stuff. So I'm holding back only to say that there's a second season that's already happening. And there's going to be a long time between season 1 and 2. And there's a lot of time for a lot of people to check out the show in between then and now. And I think season 2 will tell us more about whether or not this is the kind of thing we'll see more of.
My theory here is that, again, this shows a different genre, I feel like, than the rest of Star Wars. It's drama. And so anyone who likes dramas will see this show and be like, oh, this is absolutely amazing. But I think, and there's a lot of crossover. There are a lot of Star Wars fans like dramas for sure. And there's a lot of drama sewed into Star Wars 100%. I mean, nothing could be more dramatic than, the interpersonal relationship between Luke and his father. Like, absolutely incredible writing there in the original trilogy at the beginning. But like, ultimately, I think the issue here is that the show has not found its audience outside of hardcore Star Wars fans. Like, I think that people who will watch anything that is Star Wars because it is Star Wars, like us, they're loving it because they know about this show and they, are a pre-built audience. But I think that The Mandalorian and Kenobi and even Book of Boba Fett did a lot, executed a lot. I don't want to say executed. They got a lot more fortunate in the game of reaching out to the mainstream casual fans, because the mainstream casual fans kind of connect Star Wars with, Mandalorian armor and and Ewan McGregor with lightsaber and Darth Vader and Boba Fett. Like those things are kind of what Star Wars looks like. And when they see that, they're like, oh, that thing from Star Wars that I thought was cool. I'm going to go check this out. And without question, like Grogu is one of the most transcendental, like cultural phenomenons.
Transcendental.
Yeah, I
Good
mean,
word. Good word.
So, like, you know, like he's everywhere. Like for example, like, you know, I had a roommate once that I didn't know was a Star Wars fan. And if I'm roommates with you and I don't know you're a Star Wars fan, you must not be talking about Star Wars at all because I would know. And then my roommate put a Grogu poster up on their wall, and I'm like, You watched this? They're like, yeah, everybody watched this. What are you talking about? Like, and I'm like, wait, like we don't talk about Star Wars. I do a Star Wars podcast, and we've never talked about it. Like stuff like that. It's like transcendental. It's permeating everywhere. And so here's the thing: is this show has an audience of casual fans too, but it's the fans of dramas. It's the fans of shows. This is a big throwback that no one's gonna get, but like shows like Rubicon, for example. But I mean, I would even say, to be a little bit more culturally popular, like people who like Sherlock, or people who
Even that's
like,
going way back now.
Yeah. Okay. People who like what is that British crime drama that then was an American version of it was made?
Broadchurch.
Broadchurch, yeah. It's like people who like Broadchurch, people who like Big Little Lies, the American drama, like people who like that, you know, would love this show, but like they don't know to look for that on Disney Plus, because there's nothing like that on Disney Plus, and they don't know to look like that within the Star Wars label, because there's nothing quite like that in Star Wars. So they see this show as a Disney Plus Star Wars show, and like the casual audience that actually would like this, the non-Star Wars fan, hardcore fan audience that would like this is not connected to it, because this show, if it was on Netflix, maybe, if it was on HBO, maybe, but not here on Disney Plus. They're not even subscribed to Disney Plus. People who like that stuff are not even subscribed to this service.
And this is why I'm saying I'm more interested in viewership and that sort of thing for season 2, because I think there's going to be a year and a half at minimum between season 1 and season 2. That's a lot of time for some word of mouth to spread about this show, and for the people that are like, well, I'll check it out when it's all available, to check it out then. And I think season 2 will be much more telling about, is there really a viable audience in the big picture for more of this regularly, rather than doing this as a special event kind of thing. Yeah, this type of storytelling. I mean, when this show, like for instance, like when this show ends, I'm going to tell my dad to watch it. My dad has never seen Disney Plus before. I don't know if he even knows what it is. Like he's not checking out WandaVision.
No. He has Netflix and Amazon Prime, and and he watches those two, and Hulu sometimes. Like, but you know, he doesn't Disney Plus. He's not a Disney fan. Disney does not appeal to him one bit, like not one bit. And so, like, but I'm gonna tell him, like, you're gonna like this show because it's like the dramas that you watch on Netflix. And in Rogue One is he said he liked Rogue One of all the newer films. That was his favorite. So yeah, I'm going to tell him about this when it's over, and he's going to add to those numbers. Yeah.
Well, that experience is happening to me a little bit, because my mum, who is not a Star Wars fan at all, really doesn't know much about it, just as much as I talk about it. That's probably what she knows. And she's watching Andor. She's watching it weekly. Wow. And she rings me up afterwards and she tells me what she thinks of it, which is a funny experience. And it's actually, I mean, one funny fact, because she wasn't too familiar with Cassian, first of all. And for most of those episodes, his name was Clem. She keeps forgetting his name is Cassian and keeps calling him Clem. Great. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that's nice. Gold. But she's having an interesting response to it, where she just picks up on things as like I think from a lens of someone who's so deep into Star Wars. I'm looking for the guard masks in the back of Luthen's shop, and I'm looking for all the little details like that, and kind of trying to piece it together with all the other pieces of Star Wars media I know about, where she's coming at it from a totally different angle of not understanding any of that context and just judging it pretty blankly as just a TV show. And it's quite a different experience. But we always have different things to say, and she always tells me something she's noticed that I would not have noticed. So yeah, it's interesting.
Sounds like an excellent idea for a podcast. You and your mom reviewing Andor.
Yes. Oh my god.
Could be the next the next show on the Star Wars Underworld Network.
Raesides.
Oh, there
Wow,
it
there
is.
you
The many Raesides of Andor. Well, speaking of guard masks in the background, I think it's that time.
I felt
what?
like I spoiled. Did I spoil the corner?
No, it's time. It's time for Ben's Connection Corner. Corner something, and I forgot the song. There was too much singing earlier, and now I can't sing now. But zoop zoop, ding ding.
Hey,
hey, yeah. Ben, what you got for us this week?
All right. Well, I'm gonna first off at the top of my list, something I don't think anybody noticed. I genuinely think this is something that I am the only person in the entire world watching this episode noticed. Obviously, we got a KX droid in the episode. You may have noticed. I don't know. He was right there at the end of the episode. I don't know how y'all missed him, but
yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I just all I could see was the shore trooper. That's all I could see.
Yeah. It happens to everybody. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I got a keen eye for this kind of stuff. You wouldn't understand. I will repeat.
We're all just like we're not giving you this joke, Ben. We're not giving you this one. You're getting nothing from all of us.
Fair enough. It's a really bad, dumb joke. Shut up. I will reiterate that the attendant droids at the spaceport, I swear I've seen them somewhere before, but I literally looked on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia has not been updated with that information. So I don't know. I could be going crazy, but
it's a species or something. There's like a live version of that fake.
Well, look, the battle droids are based on Geonosians, so it wouldn't be other possibilities that there would be droids. Protocol droids are supposed to be humans, supposed to be mechanical humans, so it makes sense. So they're also at the spaceport. We see some troopers wearing security forces wearing the helmets that's things, which kind of confuses me because I always. Maybe going back to the old EU days, or maybe my old source books that I've got of attaching those to the Alderaanian Royal Guard, which we just recently saw in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then we see him show up in the Mandalorian on the New Republic ship, New Republic prison ship. They're also wearing Matt Lander's wearing one. And so I'm kind of confused here because I'm is this this is Empire territory here? Is this just a random? It's just a helmet they just wear, for security forces or whatever, soldiers, whatever. I don't know. But they're definitely there, and adds a little Star Wars flair to a lot of stuff. So it's cool. So I mentioned data tapes. If you look behind when Dedra goes into the to talk to Velzonis is his name, the guy who's
sleeping guy
that's all messed up. If you look in the background, there is a tower. There is a data vault tower exactly like the ones in the data vault on Scarif, out a window in the background of that shot, which is really cool. Just the fact that, obviously the same technology, and he's data and, whatever guy. So that's pretty cool. This is not the first. Definitely not the first person to point this out. There's a Gungan shield in Luthen's store in the background. I actually haven't seen it yet. I was told it was in there. So
Wait,
I'm just cheating. I'm just cheating.
I
saw screenshots. I saw screenshots.
The integrity of Ben's Connection Corner being called into question here.
I know. I'm ashamed. So at the party, there's a big alien, big tall alien. It looks kind of like an Ithorian, I assume. I think it's off to the left in one of the shots. And then there's a big purple alien lady in there that I am fairly certain. I would need to double check this. I'm pretty sure she's from Canto Bight in Last Jedi. Pretty sure it's probably the same costume, animatronic, whatever, and everything. Which you make sense that we're seeing a lot of Joel. But we're seeing a lot of sequel trilogy aliens, and that's just a product of, it's literally they just have this stuff in a warehouse. This is all shot in England. They can just pull this stuff out of storage and use it again. So that's where we're seeing a lot of that. I love the mention of Ord Mantell. Obviously, we haven't really seen. We got it in Bad Batch finally. We haven't seen a whole lot of it, but really cool to kind of keep up the it's the Star Wars planet that everybody mentions that you don't see much of. We got a confirmation on Twitter that the stormtroopers that are you a part of it? Are you a part of it? That just keep harassing him is voiced by none other than Sam Witwer himself. That's cool. We mentioned the Chiss, and it's, if you want to go find this yourself, you can go to 00-11-25 in the episode itself. Look in the background to the left of Cyril. There is a dude, looks very blue with black hair, and he's got sunglasses on, and he's doing his work. I don't know what it is if it's not a Chiss, honestly. Gotta be a Chiss guy. He's just sitting back there. Which would be, is that the first Chiss in live action?
I believe
it would be.
So, yeah.
I don't think we've had it before. Which this guy beat out Thrawn, getting into the live action shows. That's cool. And also there's a probe droid floating around on the beach. Some people know all the droids. I don't know them all. It just looks a lot like the probe droid that comes up when you're writing Star Tours and comes in and it comes up to the window and suction cups to the window and scans around and oh, you're the rebel spy, and calamity happens. So that's kind of what those looks like. And then the rest of this is just a little mini segment within Ben's Connections Corner, which is called Ben's Observations Corner, where I just point out stuff that I like, that I thought was cool. I love that Cyril's mom's cluttered kitchen counter is just so messy, and it's just not like everything's a lot of stuff in here. We see all the sterile Imperial environments. There's just coffee makers and stuff in the background. It's yeah, that's exactly how it would be. That's a realistic kitchen in a galaxy far away. That's really cool. I couldn't help but draw comparisons from Marva's line about it's all coming undone to the deleted. It's not in Rogue One, the deleted Saw Gerrera line. It's The World is Coming Undone from one of the first Rogue One trailers, which was really cool. I also did crunch the numbers here, and I went back and watched the previous episode. They mention that 134 Donnies were arrested after the incident on Aldhani. Because I was like, okay, how many of those were people at festival? There was only 60 people at the festival that night.
Man.
So they arrested everyone at the festival and then went and found some other Donnie somewhere and arrested them too. So everyone on the planet is in lockdown. And also there's a freaking lawn chair. There's an Earth lawn chair on the freaking beach seawall, just sitting there. If you just pause and look at some of the stuff. There's just a regular rusty lawn chair that I could find probably in my house somewhere, right now, just ridiculous. And that's it. That's all. That concludes Ben's Connections Corner and Ben's Observations Corner. There we go. That was. I don't even know. That probably sucked, but whatever.
That was great. Iconic.
I have a question. And it's related, but also kind of not related. This species of alien that we're trying to think of that is the shape of these droids we see. I know we've seen it, and my brain is reaching into the deepest realms of my memory. Right? I think what's the arc of the Clone Wars where Boba like is teamed up with Aura Singh? I have to like close my eyes to like see the
You're
memory.
talking about Lethal Trackdown, R2 Come Home. Those episodes.
No, but it's like the one where they like there's like a planet
In
they
the
go
se-
to
in the
and they
season
do this
2.
mission.
They go,
But they like capture that they like
they go to
moving this
Vancouver.
cargo.
They take down the Star Destroyer.
No,
They
you
go to
guys are
Vancouver.
thinking of two different episodes.
Are we thinking about the Asajj Ventress
because there's
one?
the Asajj Ventress episode and there's the Aura Singh episode. Boba
Bounty
goes on
Hunter.
missions with
Okay.
with
we
both bald
got
ladies.
our blonde. We got our
Bounty.
bald women.
Okay,
ladies.
listen. You're just
Confused.
rubbing salt. You're rubbing salt in my wound right now because of the worst quote from
I
anybody.
knew you were going to bring this up.
Whoever worked on Star Wars. The worst quote I've ever heard is, "We had to take Asajj Ventress's force powers away because people would confuse her."
You
See?
just proved why they had to do that because you just said they took Asajj Ventress's
right.
force powers
See?
away.
See?
You meant they took Aura Singh, but this is why.
Yes.
And you know
Yeah.
who said that, right?
love it.
It was George. George said that.
Well,
That was a George
they shouldn't
call.
have done that because, but here's the thing: I am proving them wrong because the point is people still confuse them. So you should have just left it in because it wouldn't have made a difference. There.
That is true.
I
What's-
love a
but
good
it's-
rant from 2009.
But what's this arc where they like
Bounty?
go to this planet? Is it and there's like
name of the
someone in a
episode's Bounty.
crate? Is that it? Okay, let me look.
Yeah,
it up. I reckon this
it's
species
got
is
it's
here.
Bosk and Dengar and Latsrazi and Boba and Ventress, and they're all on a train. They're fighting space ninjas.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
a train. Okay, guys, let me figure
It's
this
the best
out.
episode
Clone Wars
ever.
Bounty. If this is right, I reckon the species is in it. You know what? This isn't even a dramatic point. I don't know why I'm hell bent on finding this out.
Oh,
This is Hannah's connection hallway, where she's trying to
we
work
have
out.
another assigned space.
We're gonna
Yeah.
be here another hour.
Yeah.
Me just googling.
You go down
I
the
think-
corridor to get to
What-
the
what-
hallway to
what-
get in the corner.
The corridor in the hallway, and how are they?
It's purely philosophical.
Okay.
I think while Hannah is looking for the answer, what we should do is go to final thoughts and scores out of 10 for Announcement Season 1, Episode 7. Ben, it looks like you're in the middle of some research right now.
No,
Do
I'm
you
just
wanna-
distracted. No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Give us your final thoughts and scores out of 10 for this episode.
Well, I really, really enjoyed this episode. I'm not going to say it's the strongest of the entire arc, but I think story-wise, it's probably one of the stronger ones. Just the fact that it's continuing to build on this, continuing to give us more character development, and as I said off the top, giving us some much-needed kind of a breath of fresh air. And what is that? I'm sorry, I have to ask.
Hannah is reacting
It is
to
like-
something.
This species is in this episode. Like, Ben, continue your thought. I'm gonna get a photo so we can put it and show everyone.
I knew you made a breakthrough. I had to stop.
Yes, my brain. I know Clone Wars so well.
Oh my gosh,
Okay,
I'm very
continue.
interested to hear this now, but
I'll
I gotta
become
finish my
you. I'll
thoughts
become
here.
you.
As I said off the top, I love the just kind of the breath of fresh air after the first episode. That obviously all the intensity built up, and then getting this kind of fallout of what happened last week, and it's just incredible. And the interplay between characters and I think the whole dynamic between how the characters react to it are very much the same. I think the Empire is kind of like especially Daedra is like, we're playing right into their hands, or, we're doing all this, and which is true, but then also on the other side of it, Mon Mothma is worried about, all these different things and worried about what the Empire is going to do. But Luthen wants all this. Luthen kind of being a mini Palpatine all his own, kind of orchestrating things to his favor and really kind of messing things up for a lot of people. All these characters are so well fleshed out and so well balanced. I don't feel like it still feels like Andor. I feel like this was the one show going in that was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to accept the fact that this is gonna be just an ensemble cast, and it's not going to necessarily reflect the title of the show, and then I can, just move on with my life. I'm not going to complain about it every week. It's just going to be that. But they still manage to keep the focus on Andor. Andor is the kind of the emotional touch point for the show. Continues to be the focus of the show. Everything seems to revolve around him, but it still manages to hold so many different characters in the wind and manages to give them all something really interesting to do. There's not one plot line that I'm really saying, I don't care about this. Because there's a lot of shows that I've watched. And I'm like, I wish they would get back to the other plot line. I don't care anything about this or any of these characters. I just want to get back to the meat of the story. There's nothing in Andor that I'm like when I'm watching Mon Mothma do her thing, that's amazing. Luthen, amazing. All the ISB stuff, I've no idea. I would be so enthralled by a bunch of people talking at each other in white uniforms, but here we are. So I will wrap this up to say that I think a 9 out of 10, honestly. 9 out of 10 has got to be. It's got to be it because this is incredible.
Nice. 9 out of 10 from Ben. Hannah, before we get your final thoughts and score out of 10, you have found your alien.
Like the bird beak dude. That's right.
Yes,
with the two-way opening mouth.
Yes.
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 Voiced by Tom Kane.
Yeah.
There you go.
Himself.
There it is. There it is. So for everybody who is just listening, fast forward to it, wants to see the image, go to the 2 hour and 24-minute mark in the video. And you will see what was driving Hannah insane all episode.
I can't remember his name. I just remember him talking about Otua Blank.
Okay. All right.
Major Rigoso, that is his name.
I remember this. Another Major.
Look him up.
All the connections.
Look at
R.I.P. I'm pretty sure he died in that train.
Wow.
So there it is. Another classic installment of Hannah's Connection Hallway.
Wow. The deep satisfaction I feel right now is immense.
I'm just gonna leave this image up, Hannah, while you give your final thoughts and score.
Yeah, for
10.
sure.
We'll just all bask in it.
Yeah, scores out of 10. I got to give this a solid a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10, which is actually pretty high for me for Andor, to be honest. So far, I like the dialogue here. Main criticism is I just wanted everything more, which is a pretty good criticism, that I want more of the thing. A little bit of a pernickety thing that I didn't like too many of the aesthetics of the robots we saw. It felt a bit Star Trek to me, actually, a couple of scenes. But the bulk of everything that was happening, Mon Mothma, Luthen, Cassian, and Marva, these conversations were just so chef kiss. Like we keep saying this episode, very chef kiss written, very well written. So yeah, I enjoy this episode. I'm looking forward to kind of this being in the rewatch and coming back to this episode in the context of everything that's going to happen. Yeah, happy days from me.
All right, a happy days 7 out of 10 from Hannah.
Oh, happy days!
But the singing is back. I'm looking forward to seeing the copyright strikes pile up.
I can't really impersonate Ron Howard, let alone teenage Ron Howard. So I had to go with the song version.
Fair enough. Chris, your final thoughts and score out of 10.
Oh man, like I will say it again. Like, this is a genre that I really like. It's probably my preferred genre. Like, I don't try to watch things that are similar to Star Wars that aren't Star Wars very often. Like, I'll watch Dune. I'll watch some of Star Trek. But really, like, that genre, like, I think Star Wars, the reason why Star Wars transcends that genre is because it has those extra elements to it and extra genres being put into it. So to see something that is a drama within Star Wars, it's just absolutely amazing for me. Because again, I would watch this show if it wasn't Star Wars. Take away all the Star Wars stuff, I still think it's an amazing show that I would watch and enjoy, because it's a character driven show that is just really, really fantastic with amazing acting and amazing attention to detail and the plot and the writing. This is incredible. I just, there's these little moments in the cinematography that I get geeked out over when watching usually non-Star Wars things that like are in Star Wars. Like for instance, when someone's walking under a reflective surface, shooting the reflective surface of them walking instead of them walking. Like really cool, just cinematography, kind of artistic pieces to it. And then like doing like a drone shot over looking straight down at the ocean as like these like bird alien creatures are flying for a while with like really cool synth music. Like that's not something I would have ever expected to see in Star Wars, but it's really, really cool. So great intro to like Space Miami Beach there. Like that was freaking awesome. I watched the show once with subtitles, once without subtitles. Sometimes I flip up the order that I do that in, but I always kind of know I'm going to watch it twice and I'm going to try to glean more from it because it's so deep and it's so awesome. So this continues to be an amazing show. I've never seen so much consistency. The quality of the episodes is the same. I know for a lot of people, it ranges based on different, tastes and such, or expectations. But for me, it's like going back to your favorite restaurant and getting your favorite dish every time you go. And it's the same thing every time. Like, that's what I feel like every episode, I kind of know what I'm going to get and it's great. And I'm always satisfied. Like, that's just really incredible. So, I just hope that Disney, with its billions and billions of dollars and it's just millions of subscribers to Disney Plus, more than they ever thought they would get, continues to kind of reach out to try to expand Disney Plus into an audience that likes a little bit different of a genre of content, because I would be so overjoyed to see, I don't need all Star Wars shows to be like this, but to continue to see some Star Wars shows built like this show forever would be incredible for me. And I do think that's what George Lucas would have done as well. I think it's very in line with Star Wars to take things in this direction. It's a natural extrapolation. So yeah, 10 out of 10. I'm kind of just waiting for them to mess up. I'm like, when are they going to mess up? When am I going to say I don't like something? And it's like, it hasn't happened yet. 7 episodes in, I think everything is perfect for me, which is incredible.
All right, 10 out of 10. For me, I'm gonna give it the 9.5. I'm gonna revert back to what I was giving everything prior to last week. I thought the episode really, really strong for all the reasons that we've talked about. At this point, there's really nothing left to say about it. It's a great episode, great drama in the conversations, great character moments, and great music as well. Great score, great visuals, amazing. All of that stuff. I will just quickly throw in a quick Dom's Connection doorway. I want to know.
Wow.
There's a moment there where when Clea's going to see Vel, where it looks to be something drawn on the ground in chalk that she walks by. I want to know what that is. I want to know more about that. So I will be keeping my eyes peeled.
I just rewatched the episode just before this show. And I just clicked. I think it's the Andor logo. I think it's like the almost closed circle and a line. Because I was kind of reading it from the other way, but I think the camera angle is the way we look at it, kind of thing. So if you go back and look at it, I think it's the Andor logo. But maybe I don't know.
Nice. Okay, I have to look at it again. Maybe it'll show up some more. But yeah, 9.5 from me. And with that, we will begin to wrap things up for this week.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so very much for watching, for listening to the show. Of course, we'll be back with another episode reviewing the 8th episode of Andor. Consequences. No, I'm making that up. Next week, same time, same place, and that place is YouTube, and that time is at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard time, please adjust for whatever time zones you're in. And also keep in mind that daylight savings time is going to probably end or begin or whatever in a lot of places. So
Oh,
times
God.
might be changing for you. So don't miss our show because
Is
of
it?
that.
But it's fall back, right? So we
It's
can.
a nice one.
It's
More-
the good
more
one. Okay,
sleep.
actually, good. Yeah. All right, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this.
Anna has the calendar out.
It's
Hopefully that's
is
enough
it
show.
next week or the? It's the week after, isn't it?
I feel like
coming
it's.
up.
The 6th
You know-
of November. That's what I have in my calendar.
Remember. Wait, no, that's the 5th. But yes.
I don't care if we're boycotting it since they told us to
I thought it was
spring
over
forward.
here. I thought they voted to get rid of it, but apparently that's going to affect for many years, and they have to vote again. And it's just never so easy. It's just getting rid of something that affects everybody's life. But anyway, yes, at the SWU is our handle. That's where you can follow us on the social medias. In the meantime, so you don't miss any announcements about our programming or any breaking Star Wars news or anything you need to know throughout the week. We want to once again give a special shout out to Catherine for joining us for the good part of the episode. We appreciate her insights, and make sure that you check out the channel that she's on, Culture Slate Reacts, for more from her, reacting to Andor, other Star Wars projects, and other stuff too, like horror films and Marvel shows, and lots of good stuff over there at Culture Slate Reacts. Dom, thank you so much for hosting today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I'm going to keep these end thoughts quick because I'm getting very, very tired over here. If you've been watching, you can see me stifling many a yawn for the last little while. And it wasn't because I wasn't interested in what you all are saying, because that's why the show kept going. I didn't cut it off. Yeah, excellent discussion. Great fun talking about this episode. And, if anybody is interested in, seeing something from a future week's episode, the official Star Wars social media accounts tweeted out posted some images from this week's episode, and someone goofed, and there was a picture that wasn't included. That wasn't from a moment in this week's episode, so it apparently has been taken down. But everything lives on forever on the internet, so
Come on, Bob.
you can
Come
seek
on.
it out. I won't say what it is just because, spoilers or whatever, but it's not really a huge spoiler. So even if you come across it, I think it's in the trailers anyways. So there you go. But it's out there. But yeah, great show. Cannot wait to do all this again in 7 days' time. When, by the way, not only will we have a new episode of Andor, Tales of the Freaking Jedi also comes out next week. So just nothing but Star Wars. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Hannah, please tell me that Australia is getting that at the same time as North America.
You know what? The temperature isn't right, so we're not gonna get it.
Oh man.
No, we are getting it. I think I'll double check my sources. We should be getting it. Which, speaking of, I will plug that on the Raeside next week we are going to be doing a premiere countdown for Tales of the Jedi. So 2 hours before. Assuming it comes out at midnight. I haven't seen it anywhere say it's not going to come out at midnight. So 2 hours before midnight Pacific time, or that's 1 a.m. Eastern time. For 2 hours, we're going to be just hyping up, getting excited for it to drop. And also talking a little bit of Andor in there as well, because it's coming out at the same time. Head on over to the Raeside for to stay awake. To stay awake for all the coming up over there.
Awesome. And of course, at the Raeside is where you can follow Hannah. That's Raeside. You can follow Dominic at DominicJ25. I'm at C3PO. Ben, thank you as well for hosting.
Oh, it was a pleasure as always. I will refrain from singing for the rest of the episode. And only reserve that for like once every 200 episodes. So you won't get subject to that anymore. But yeah, this was a great episode of Andor. I'm trying to think how in the bleep are we going to talk about Tales of the Jedi in addition to Andor next week. I really think they should have thought this through. I think we should have taken an Andor off or something next week. This is scaring me now. because we've been at this for like 3 hours, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface on this episode. And next week's episode, they're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at us. We're going to have a ton of stuff to talk about, and then we're going to have Tales and Jedi on top of that, and we're also going to sit here and be, just absolutely mind blown, and have too many things to say. So I don't know. Catch us next week to see how this turns out.
That's right. At Ben Hart with no E is where you can find Ben on social media. And don't forget, while you're following him on social media, ask him for the keys to our Discord server. We want to thank everybody who super chatted with us tonight. I can't remember if we got to it, but Francisco gave us a super chat as well. And it's fascinating because it's in Peruvian currency, which is really cool. I was trying to figure out. Instead of the dollar symbol, it says PEN. I'm like trying to figure out what is that, and I look it up, and it's the Peruvian sol. That's their currency marker. So thank you. This is the first time anyone's given us money for Peru. That's super cool from directly like that. Were you gonna say something, Ben? Sorry.
No. He said it already. He said it already. You have to listen back to the mix to hear it.
Yeah. So, that's funny.
Wow.
So that's awesome. Thank you, and thanks to Joel as well as always for being so generous and donating, and thanks to our channel members as well. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't. You can send your feedback to swunderworld@gmail.com, and please leave a review if you are listening to us on your favorite app. So that's it. We'll be back next week, but until then, for Catherine and Dom and Ben and Hannah and all the other fantastic folks at the Star Wars Underworld, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.